What if I told you the war in Iraq wasn't just about oil or politics, but about something buried deep beneath the desert sands? A 4,000-year-old tomb sealed in myth. A legendary king said to be part human, part god. Gilgamesh. In 2003, U.S. military forces stormed Iraq with precision. But within weeks, whispers spread through the intelligence world. They weren't just targeting weapons. They were excavating something ancient. A secret underground system hidden beneath the ruins of Uruk. Satellite scans, sealed chambers, and then total silence. What did they find? Why was the world never told the full story? Tonight, we uncover the chilling truth behind the U.S. mission to recover the body of a god king, and what they might have awakened beneath the earth. Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a time of dust and uncertainty. Imagine the air, thick with the metallic tang of recent conflict and the ancient grit of the Mesopotamian desert. A place where the cradle of civilization is now a landscape of geopolitical chess. We're embedding with a team of elite soldiers who think their mission is one thing, only to find themselves custodians of a secret so old, it's written on clay instead of in code. They are about to be ordered to find a ghost, to dig into the very soil of myth, and to enter the original underworld, a place from which, spoiler alert, no one returns. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see where our nightly journeys take us. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The inside of the Humvee smells of stale coffee, diesel fumes, and nervous sweat. Your sweat. It trickles down your temples, carving clean paths through the grime caked on your skin. Every jolt and shudder of the vehicle is a familiar language, a rough massage translated through the dense padding of your body armor. It's 2003, somewhere in southern Iraq. The big push to Baghdad is over, the statues have fallen, and the official mission is accomplished. But everyone on the ground knows the real work, the messy, unpredictable, and far more dangerous work, has just begun. Your world has been reduced to the shaky view through the thick, bullet-resistant glass, a monochrome panorama of pale sand, shimmering heat haze, and the occasional skeletal remains of a date palm grove. You're part of a small, highly trained team. The kind of unit that gets called when things are either very bad or very strange. Today, so far, has been agonizingly routine. A simple reconnaissance patrol, mapping out routes that are probably already mined. Your squad leader, Sergeant Reyes, is a statue of calm in the front passenger seat, his eyes scanning the horizon with a practiced, almost bored intensity. The radio crackles, a burst of static, then a clipped, coded voice from command. You catch your call sign. Reyes picks up the handset. You and the others in the back, a hulking medic named Doc and a quiet communications specialist everyone calls Whisper, go still. A change in plans out here is rarely a good thing. Reyes listens, his only response a series of grunts. Roger that. Acknowledged. On our way. He hangs up the handset and turns, his face unreadable. All right, listen up. Patrol scrubbed. Where are TB? New orders. There's a collective sigh of relief. Returning to the relative sanity of the forward operating base is always a welcome development. But the relief is short-lived. There's an edge to Reyes's voice you don't like. A hint of bewilderment. An hour later, you're not debriefing, you're being rebriefed. You're in a stuffy, air-conditioned tent that still can't quite beat the oppressive heat. The man giving the orders isn't your company commander. He's a clean-shaven man in a crisp, sterile uniform with no name tag and an insignia you don't recognize. He has the kind of posture that suggests he's never had to sleep in the dirt. He places a single laminated file on the metal table. At 0400, he says, his voice flat, you will escort a civilian asset to these coordinates. He taps a location on a satellite map. It's deep in the desert, not far from the archaeological site of ancient Uruk. Your mission is to provide security and operational support. The nature of the asset's work is on a need-to-know basis. You do not need to know. Doc, ever the diplomat, clears his throat. Sir, with all due respect, what kind of support? Are we digging something? Protecting a survey. The man in the clean uniform gives him a thin, humorless smile. You'll be provided with specialized equipment. Your job is to make sure he can do his, and that no one else, local or otherwise, knows you were ever there. This is a matter of historical preservation. He says the words like they're a punchline to a joke you're not supposed to get. You exchange a glance with Whisper. Historical preservation? You're carrying millions of dollars of cutting-edge military hardware to go protect a history professor? It makes no sense. This is the kind of mission that breeds rumors. You've heard whispers of similar things before, oddball operations that sound more like fiction than fact. One of the guys from another unit swore he saw a team airlifting a sealed crate out of a pre-dynastic Egyptian tomb a few years back. It's the kind of story you dismiss as barracks folklore, like tales of the Nazis having a whole division, the Anunnaki, dedicated to finding mythical artifacts. It seems absurd, until you're the one being told to pack drilling equipment for a trip into the middle of nowhere to babysit a historian. The mainstream historical fact of the matter is that the 2003 invasion of Iraq was a swift and overwhelming military campaign. What came after was a decade of chaos, insurgency, and a desperate struggle to impose order on a fractured nation. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation was a genuine fear of weapons of mass destruction, a desire to secure oil fields, or a more complex plan for reshaping the Middle East. You suspect that if you polled 1,000 academics on the subject, not a single one would have guessed the answer was to find the grave of a 5,000-year-old mythological king. The civilian asset arrives just before you're scheduled to roll out. He's not what you expected. He isn't a dusty, tweed-wearing professor. He's a quiet, intense man named Dr. Eris Thorne, with eyes that seem to see right through the canvas of the tent and out into the whispering desert beyond. He carries a reinforced pelican case that he never lets out of his sight. He offers no pleasantries, just a curt nod to Reyes. As you load the gear into the Humvees, you see what he meant by specialized equipment. It's not just shovels and brushes. There's ground-penetrating radar, sonic drills, and something that looks suspiciously like a portable seismic emitter. This isn't an archaeological dig. This is an intrusion. A high-tech breaking and entering into the earth itself. The absurdity of it all makes you want to laugh. Here you are, a 21st century soldier, about to play bodyguard for a man who looks like he's going to declare war on geology. You're no longer on a patrol. You're on a quest. And as you roll out under the cover of a moonless night, the silence in the vehicle is heavier than ever, filled with the unspoken question that hangs in the air like dust. What in the world are we really looking for? The convoy moves like a phantom through the night, headlights off, guided only by the ghostly green glow of night vision optics and GPS. The only sounds are the deep rumble of the engines and the crunch of sand and gravel beneath the heavy tires. Inside your vehicle, the silence has taken on a new texture. It's no longer just the quiet of professionals at work. It's the quiet of deep, shared confusion. You glance at Dr. Thorne, who sits bolted upright, his mysterious case resting on his lap. His eyes are closed, but you're certain he isn't sleeping. He looks more like a man in meditation, or perhaps prayer, preparing himself for something monumental. What could a German archaeological team have possibly found that would warrant this level of clandestine, military-grade interest? The answer, you suspect, lies in a news story that barely made a ripple before being drowned in the tidal wave of the invasion. Just a few months ago, before the bombs started falling, a team from Germany, using sophisticated magnetic and resistance surveys, announced a discovery. They had been working around the ruins of Uruk, the legendary city-state of ancient Sumer. Their equipment, designed to see beneath the earth without digging, had painted a picture of the ground below. And in that digital image, they found something extraordinary. An entire district of the ancient city, including houses, gardens, and a complex system of canals, all buried by millennia of silt from the Euphrates River. This is a fairly well-known historical fact. Uruk was a massive, sprawling metropolis, arguably the world's first true city, and much of it remains unexcavated, slumbering beneath the Iraqi sands. But the Germans found something more. Deep in what they identified as the old riverbed of the Euphrates, their instruments revealed a large, perfectly symmetrical structure. Building. Something that looked very much like a burial chamber, a mausoleum, constructed with a level of precision that was breathtaking. And given its location, exactly where ancient texts described it would be, the head of the project, a man named Georg Fassbinder, made a bold and electrifying claim. He said they had likely found the tomb of the most famous Sumerian of all, the legendary king Gilgamesh. The announcement was stunning. It was the archaeological equivalent of finding King Arthur's sword still stuck in the stone. It flickered across news tickers for a day, a brief, wondrous story of discovery. Then, the world's attention snapped back to the impending war. The story and the German team's data vanished. The researchers were evacuated, the site was abandoned, and the discovery was swallowed by the fog of war. Now, sitting in this rumbling Humvee, you realize you're not just on a security detail. You're the sharp end of a stick, poking at a discovery someone important didn't want the world to know about just yet. Someone wanted to get there first. This kind of deliberate suppression of information isn't new. The Romans had a practice for it, damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory, where a person's name and likeness were systematically chiseled off monuments and erased from records. It was the state-sanctioned act of making someone unhappy. You get the feeling this mission is a modern, high-tech version of that, not to erase a memory, but to seize it to control its narrative before it can even be written. Reyes finally breaks the silence, his voice a low grumble over the vehicle's intercom. Thorn, you care to tell us what's so special about this hole in the ground we're about to risk our necks for? Thorn's eyes snap open. They're startlingly pale blue. Sergeant, what do you know of the Epic of Gilgamesh? Doc chimes in from the back. Read it in college. Oldest story ever, right? Guy's friend dies, he gets scared of dying, goes looking for eternal life. Fails. The end. A faint smile touches Thorn's lips. A remarkably succinct and accurate summary. But you left out the most important part. The details. The descriptions of the underworld, the path he took to get there, the guardians he faced, the technology he encountered. You almost laughed. Technology? You thought it was a poem about gods and monsters. Thorn seems to read your mind. We think of our ancestors as primitives, playing with mud and sticks. We pat ourselves on the back for inventing the microchip. But we forget that Sumerians invented the wheel, the sail, astronomy, complex mathematics, and the 60-second minute you time your operations by. They laid the very foundation of civilization. It's a truth that's easy to forget. We owe the fundamental structure of our timekeeping to these ancient people. He leans forward slightly, his intensity drawing you all in. Now consider this. What if the epic isn't just a myth? Historians still argue whether the journey described is purely allegorical or a coded description of a real physical place. What if it's a set of instructions? Blueprint. The German team found the location described in the text. We're here to see what's inside. We're here because the United States government has reason to believe that the secret to immortality that Gilgamesh failed to bring back was not a plant, as the story claims, but a piece of technology. The cabin goes silent again, but this time it's a different kind of quiet. A heavy, ringing silence filled with the sheer audacity of what he just said. You're not raiding a tomb for gold or historical bragging rights. You're on a recovery mission for a piece of hypothetical 5,000-year-old alien tech. It's the most insane thing you've ever heard. And yet, looking at the grim certainty on Thorn's face and the $1 million sonic drill packed in the vehicle behind you, a terrifying thought creeps into your mind. What if he's right? The name Gilgamesh echoes in your mind, not as a character from a story, but as the target of your mission. He's no longer a mythical figure in a dusty book. He's a tangible objective, a person of interest whose final resting place is marked by a blinking cursor on a GPS display. Dr. Thorne's words have reframed everything. You're not just providing security for a dig, you're potentially standing on the precipice of a discovery that could rewrite human history, technology, and philosophy. The weight of it settles in your gut, a cold, hard knot that has nothing to do with the tension of being in a combat zone. To understand what you're truly looking for, you first have to understand who, or what Gilgamesh was. You try to piece together what you remember from that college class Doc mentioned. Gilgamesh was a king, you recall that much. He ruled the city of Uruk, the very place you're now approaching. He was described as 2/3 god and 1/3 man, a classic bit of ancient propaganda to legitimize a ruler's power. Egyptian pharaohs did it, Roman emperors did it, claiming divine parentage is the oldest political trick in the book. But with Gilgamesh, it feels different. The stories about him are so much older, so foundational, they feel less like propaganda and more like a blurred memory of something real. Dr. Thorne, as if sensing the questions coalescing in the vehicle, begins to speak again, his voice low and steady, a professor lecturing his most exclusive and heavily armed seminar. The man you know as Gilgamesh was most likely a real historical figure. The Sumerian king list, a clay tablet that documents the rulers of Sumer, lists a Gilgamesh as the 5th king of the first dynasty of Uruk. It says he reigned for 126 years, which has always been dismissed as a mythic exaggeration. He pauses. We tend to be very quick to dismiss things that don't fit our understanding of the world. This is a well-established historical fact. The Sumerian king list is a real artifact, discovered in the early 20th century, and it provides a fascinating, though not entirely reliable, timeline of rulers stretching back into prehistory. It blends plausible reigns with fantastically long ones, leading historians to debate where the line between history and myth truly lies. Was Gilgamesh a real king whose deeds were later exaggerated into an epic, or a mythological figure who was retroactively placed into a king list to give him a veneer of historicity? Historians still argue whether the list represents actual successive reigns or a more complex political document that legitimized certain cities by giving them a long, unbroken lineage of kingship. Thorne continues, according to the legends, the historical Gilgamesh was a powerful but tyrannical ruler. He was a builder. He erected the massive walls of Uruk, a feat so impressive that ancient writers spoke of them with awe. He was also, to put it mildly, a bit of a brute. The epic tells us he was arrogant, sleeping with his warriors' brides on their wedding nights. His people cried out to the gods for relief. You can almost picture it, a Bronze Age rock star king, powerful, admired, and utterly out of control. It's a very human story, despite the divine blood. So the gods, Thorne says, created a rival for him, a wild man named Enkidu, who was raised by animals. He was Gilgamesh's equal in every way. They fought, a furious, earth-shaking battle, but neither could defeat the other. And in that stalemate, they found respect. They became the closest of friends, brothers in arms. They embarked on great adventures together, slaying monsters like Humbaba, the guardian of the sacred cedar forest. The story is coming back to you now. It's a classic buddy cop movie, but 5,000 years old. The wild, untamed Enkidu balances the arrogant, civilized Gilgamesh. Together, they are whole. But their hubris angers the gods. As punishment, the gods decree that one of them must die. They choose Enkidu. Enkidu's death is the pivot point of the entire epic, Thorne explains, his voice dropping. Gilgamesh is shattered. He watches his friend die, and for the first time, this mighty king, this 2/3 god, is confronted with the reality of his own mortality. He sees the worm consuming his friend's body and is seized by a terror that consumes him completely. You look out the window at the dark, empty desert. The fear of death. It's the most universal human experience. It's why you wear 40 pounds of ceramic plates and Kevlar. It's why Doc carries morphine and tourniquets. And so, Thorne concludes, Gilgamesh rejects his kingdom, his wealth, his power. He sheds his fine robes for animal skins and sets off into the wilderness on a desperate quest. He is no longer seeking glory. He is seeking the one man who is said to have cheated death, Utnapishtim, the survivor of the Great Flood. Gilgamesh wants to learn the secret of eternal life. His journey takes him to the ends of the earth, through a tunnel of darkness under a mountain, and across the waters of death to find him. He is no longer a king. He is a seeker. He is the first great hero of literature, defined not by his strength, but by his fear and his grief. You realize the profound irony of your mission. Gilgamesh, the man who was so terrified of the grave that he abandoned his entire life to escape it, is now the one whose grave you are about to break into. You're violating the final resting place of history's most famous thanatophobe. It feels like a special kind of disrespect. A quirky, little-known tidbit about the epic is that some of the earliest versions were written on small, handheld clay tablets, almost like personal reading copies, suggesting that the story was immensely popular on an individual level, not just as a state-sponsored epic. People carried this story with them. It mattered. And now here you are. The convoy finally slows to a halt. The GPS confirms it. You've arrived. Out in the middle of a vast, featureless plain, under a blanket of cold, unblinking stars. This is it. The spot where the Germans saw a ghost on their radar. The place where Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, who saw the deep and brought back knowledge of the time before the flood, was supposedly laid to rest. The mission is about to go from theoretical to terrifyingly real. The doors of the Humvee open, and the desert night air hits you. It's cool, a welcome relief from the stuffy vehicle, but it carries a strange stillness. There's no wind, no sound of insects, nothing. Just a profound, listening silence that seems to emanate from the ground itself. Your boots crunch on the sand and gravel, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet. You and your team form a perimeter, weapons at a low ready, night vision turning the landscape into a shimmering green world of ghosts and shadows. Dr. Thorne gets out, his pelican case held tight to his chest like a holy relic, and stands in the center of your circle. He takes a deep breath, as if tasting the air. This is it, he whispers, his voice filled with a reverence that borders on fear. The place where the living world meets the land of the dead. He's talking about the Sumerian underworld. Before you can descend with him, he insists you must understand where you are symbolically going. You're not just drilling a hole in the ground, you're violating a sacred and terrifying boundary. You're about to knock on the front door of the land of no return. You imagine yourself as a Sumerian thousands of years ago, contemplating this very moment. For you, death isn't a gateway to a paradise or a fiery hell. There is no judgment, no weighing of souls, no promise of blissful reunion. There is only one destination for everyone, good or bad, king or peasant. It is a place called Kur or Irkalla, a vast, subterranean city of the dead, ruled by the goddess Ereshkigal and her consort, the fearsome god of death, Nergal. As Thorne speaks, the bleak landscape around you seems to transform in your mind's eye. You're not in the Iraqi desert anymore. You are standing at the edge of a great dry steppe. Before you is a river, the one you must cross to begin your journey. But this isn't a river of water. It's a river of meaningless motion, hubris, that separates the living from the dead. You are ferried across by a grim boatman named Shanabi, the same one who carried Gilgamesh. He doesn't ask for payment, only for your purpose, and the price of passage is leaving your hope on the shore behind you. Once you cross, you find yourself before a set of great, imposing gates. Not one, but 7. They are set into a mountain, or perhaps they are the mountain itself, a colossal wall of lapis lazuli that glitters faintly in the gloom. This is the entrance to Irkalla. A gatekeeper stands guard at each, and to pass you must surrender a piece of your earthly power and identity. At the first gate you give up your crown. At the second, your scepter. At the third, your fine robes. Then your jewelry, your belt, your sandals, until at the 7th and final gate, you are stripped bare, left with nothing of your former life. It's a powerful metaphor for the humbling, equalizing nature of death. Now you step inside the city itself, and your heart sinks. There is no light. The air is thick with a dust that coats your tongue and fills your lungs. It's the dust of ages, the accumulated essence of decay. The inhabitants of Urkala, the shades of the dead, shuffle aimlessly through the eternal twilight. The Epic of Gilgamesh describes them perfectly. They are clothed like birds with wings for garments, and they see no light. They dwell in darkness. In the house of dust, which I entered, I looked at kings, their crowns put away. I saw princes, those born to the crown, who had ruled the land from the days of yore. This is the bleak reality of the Sumerian afterlife. It's a place of quiet, dusty, endless boredom. There is no punishment, but there is no joy. The greatest kings and the lowliest servants share the same fate: to eat dust and clay for eternity, to drink muddy water, and to forget they were ever alive. A fringe theory, the one that makes a strange kind of sense, suggests that this vision of the afterlife was a direct reflection of the Sumerian environment. Their world was flat, often dusty, and prone to floods that left behind silt and mud. Their underworld was simply an exaggerated, eternal version of a bad day in Mesopotamia, a clever but morbid joke on their own existence. The only distinction in this gray realm is for those who died in battle or had many children to make offerings for them. They might receive a slightly cleaner cup for their muddy water. It's a grim reward system. This understanding of the afterlife is a core historical fact about Sumerian religion and profoundly influenced their culture. Life on Earth was precious precisely because the alternative was so dreadful. This wasn't about being good to get into heaven. It was about living life to the fullest before you were sent to the great gray waiting room. You picture yourself there, a ghost among ghosts. You see the shade of Gilgamesh's friend, Enkidu, whom Gilgamesh consults through a necromantic ritual. Enkidu tells him of the underworld's laws, of its squalor, confirming the hero's worst fears. It is this description, this first-hand account of the dreary eternity that awaits him, that solidifies Gilgamesh's resolve to find Utnapishtim. He isn't just running from the act of dying. He's running from this specific, soul-crushing vision of an endless, dusty nothingness. Historians still argue whether the Sumerian underworld was a literal place in their cosmology or a purely psychological space representing the fear of oblivion. Was it a story told to encourage people to have large families and respect their rulers? Or did they believe that somewhere deep beneath their feet, this dusty metropolis of the dead truly existed? Your radio crackles, pulling you from your reverie. Its whisper. Perimeter is secure, Sergeant. No movement for 5 clicks in any direction. Reyes gives a nod. All right, Thorn. The stage is all yours. Let's see what's in that box of yours. Thorn kneels and opens the pelican case. Inside, nestled in soft foam, is not some arcane relic, but a piece of ultra-modern technology. A tablet computer connected by a thick cable to a triangular device studded with strange, crystalline emitters. He boots it up. A satellite map appears on the screen, showing your precise location. The German team's magnetic resonance data was incomplete, Thorn says, his fingers flying across the screen. They saw the tomb, but they didn't see what was beneath it. They saw the house, but they missed the basement. He presses a button. The image on the screen shifts, showing a 3D rendering of the ground beneath your feet. A few feet down, there is a large, rectangular void, the tomb Fassbinder's team announced. But then Thorn zooms out, or rather down. The image resolves, showing that the tomb is just the capstone, the very top of a structure that plunges deep, deep into the earth. It's a massive, vertical complex. A tower buried upside down. You stare at the screen, a cold dread washing over you. It's not a tomb. It's an entrance. And as you look at the screen, you see 7 distinct levels, 7 massive chambers descending one below the other into the darkness. 7 gates. You're not just standing on Gilgamesh's grave. You're standing on the roof of the Sumerian underworld. And you've brought a drill. You stare at the glowing screen of Thorn's tablet, your mind struggling to process the image. It's a wireframe model of a geological impossibility. What you're standing on isn't a tomb. It's the roof, a massive, artificial structure that plunges straight down into the bedrock. Level after level, a skyscraper built in reverse. A silent, buried Tower of Babel. Your military training kicks in trying to categorize it. It's not a bunker. Bunkers are wide and reinforced against downward pressure. This is narrow and deep, seemingly designed for descent. Doc leans in, his breath fogging the cold night air. "What in God's name is that?" he whispers. Reyes just grunts, a low guttural sound of disbelief. "That's not a tomb. It's a well. A dry one." "Precisely, Sergeant," Thorn says, a strange, triumphant gleam in his eyes. He seems energized by your collective shock. You look at this, and you see something that shouldn't exist. Your 21st century logic tells you that a Bronze Age culture, people you imagine living in mud huts, could not have conceived of, let alone engineered, such a thing. But you are underestimating the Sumerians. You are underestimating them profoundly. He gestures out at the dark, empty desert around you. 5,000 years ago, this desolate place was the vibrant heart of the world, the cradle of everything you would call civilization. And it was all born from the minds of the people who lived here. They were the original architects of the human experience. He takes a breath, and the professor in him takes over completely, his voice weaving a spell against the darkness. Forget this structure for a moment. Let's talk about what we know they did. You all use the wheel every single day. The tires on these very Humvees. That was them. Right here. The Sumerians. Of course, historians still argue whether the wheel was a singular Mesopotamian invention that spread across the world, or if it was developed independently in other cultures around the same time. But the earliest definitive evidence for wheeled vehicles comes from Sumer. They didn't just invent it for pottery. They put it on carts and revolutionized transportation, agriculture, and warfare forever. But the wheel is just a physical tool, Thorn continues, his passion infectious. Their greatest invention was intellectual. It was the invention of writing. This is the bedrock historical fact of Sumerian achievement, the development of cuneiform. Thorn describes it so vividly you can almost feel it. Imagine a scribe sitting by the riverbank with a slab of wet, cool clay in his lap. He holds a reed, cut to a sharp edge. He doesn't write letters. He presses the stylus into the clay, creating small, wedge-shaped marks. A combination of wedges for head, another for bread. Over centuries, these simple pictograms evolved into a sophisticated phonetic script, capable of expressing not just two sheep, but abstract concepts like justice, love, and fear. They invented history, Thorn says, his voice dropping with emphasis. Before cuneiform, there was only the present. Everything that came before was a story, a memory that could change with every telling. With the clay tablet, the past became permanent. A king's decree, a merchant's accounts, a priest's prayer, a poet's epic. They could be stored, copied, and read 1,000 years later. It's the single most important technology humanity has ever created. Everything else, the printing press, the computer, the device in my hands, is just an evolution of that first wedge pressed into wet clay. It's a humbling thought that your entire digital world is just a faster, more fragile version of what they perfected. Drop your phone and the screen shatters. Drop a clay tablet, and you just might have two smaller, still legible tablets. A pretty good backup system. They wrote down everything. And here's a quirky little detail that speaks volumes about them. They didn't just write laws and king lists. They wrote down recipes for beer. One of the oldest pieces of literature in the world is the hymn to Ninkasi, the Sumerian goddess of brewing. It's both a beautiful prayer and a step-by-step guide to making beer from barley bread. It's basically the world's first home brewing guide, sanctified by the gods. You can't help but smile at the image of a Sumerian brewer chanting a hymn to make sure his batch didn't go sour, which is arguably a better set of instructions than you get from IKEA. Thorn taps his screen again, pulling up an image of a clay tablet covered in dense, intricate script. This is a piece of the epic of Gilgamesh, the story of the man whose grave we are currently standing on. Without cuneiform, his story would be wind. His quest, his fear, his discoveries, all gone. The people who built this structure beneath our feet are the same people who developed the ability to record their deepest thoughts for eternity. They mastered astronomy, charting the stars and creating the zodiac. They developed complex mathematics based on the number 60, which is why your watch has 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. They built the first true cities the world had ever seen, with laws, governments, and sprawling irrigation systems that turned this desert green. He looks from you to Dr. Reyes. So I ask you again, look at this impossible structure. Is it really so impossible? Or is it simply the one secret they chose not to write down on a clay tablet for everyone to find? What if the Epic of Gilgamesh isn't the full story? What if it's the public version, the fairy tale? And what if the technical manual, the real blueprint for what he found, is the structure itself? The silence that follows is different. It's no longer the silence of disbelief. It's the silence of dawning, terrifying comprehension. You're not just grave robbers. You're archaeologists of a different sort, exploring not a forgotten history, but a deliberately hidden science. Reyes finally breaks the spell. He nods slowly, his eyes fixed on the sonic drilling rigs being prepped by the rest of the support crew. All right, Dr. Thorne, you've made your point. These guys were smart. We get it. He turns to the team. Let's get ready to make some noise. Let's see if these Bronze Age geniuses knew how to build a door. The hum of the generators fills the night, a stark, modern sound intruding on the ancient silence. The support crew, a small team of engineers who arrived with Thorne, moves with quiet efficiency, setting up the sonic drill. It's a sleek, menacing piece of equipment, more like a surgical tool than a construction rig. It doesn't hammer or grind. It uses high-frequency vibrations to liquefy rock and soil, allowing it to sink into the earth with an eerie, almost silent precision. As you watch them prepare, you keep replaying Thorne's words in your head. What if the epic isn't just a myth? What if it's a set of instructions? You find yourself looking at the story in a new light. It's no longer a tale of gods and monsters, but a mission briefing, a travelogue from the world's first explorer of a forbidden realm. You start to dissect it, searching for clues, for technical details hidden in the poetry. You're not the first to do this. For centuries, scholars have treated the Epic of Gilgamesh as a foundational piece of literature, the ancestor of the Odyssey and every hero's journey that followed. That is the accepted historical fact. They study its themes of friendship, mortality, and the clash between nature and civilization. But Thorne's theory forces you to read between the lines, to treat the text not as a metaphor, but as a literal account. You take the journey with Gilgamesh again, but this time you're not a reader, you're an intelligence analyst. Your first stop is the cedar forest, guarded by the monster Humbaba. The text describes Humbaba's voice as a flood, his breath as fire, and his mouth as death itself. The poetic description is vivid, but what if it's not a monster? What if Humbaba was a security system? An automated defense mechanism left by some earlier power to guard a place of importance, perhaps a source of advanced materials or knowledge. Its voice could be a sonic weapon, its breath an incinerator. It's a wild leap, but in the context of your current mission, it feels chillingly plausible. Then there's the journey to Utnapishtim. The text is very specific. To reach him, Gilgamesh must travel through the Mashu Mountains. He enters a tunnel, a corridor of absolute darkness that he must traverse for 12 double hours. For a man walking, that's a journey of nearly 100 miles in pitch blackness. It's an ordeal that pushes him to the brink of madness. What if this isn't just a mythical passage under a mountain? What if it's a description of a specific physical place? Transport system, A subterranean tube, perhaps powered by some unknown force, that covers vast distances in a short amount of time? The feeling of traveling for 12 double hours could be the psychological effect of the journey, not a literal measure of time. After the tunnel, Gilgamesh emerges into a garden of precious stones, where the trees bear carnelian and lapis lazuli as fruit. Beautiful, fantastical image, or a description of a power source. A crystalline energy farm, a place where technology and nature have merged in a way you can't comprehend. It's the kind of fringe interpretation that would get you laughed out of any academic conference. It's pure speculation, blurring the line between archaeology and science fiction. Yet, as you stand here, preparing to drill into a geometrically perfect underground tower that shouldn't exist, the line is already starting to feel pretty blurry. The most critical part of the epic, seen through this new lens, is the meeting with Utnapishtim, the flood survivor. Gilgamesh asks him for the secret to eternal life. Utnapishtim tells him the story of the Great Flood, an account that predates the biblical story of Noah by more than 1,000 years, and how the gods granted him immortality. But then he challenges Gilgamesh. First, prevail against sleep for 6 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh, exhausted from his journey, immediately fails, falling asleep for a week. Utnapishtim's wife bakes a loaf of bread for each day he sleeps, placing them beside him. When he awakes, he sees the 7 loaves in various states of decay, from fresh to moldy to hard as a rock, proving how long he has slept. It's a poignant symbol of his human frailty. But what if it's not just bread? What if it's a test? A diagnostic tool? Perhaps the 7 loaves are organic sensors of some kind, measuring his biological processes, his rate of decay. He fails the test, proving his biology is incompatible with the immortality process. Defeated, Gilgamesh prepares to leave. But Utnapishtim's wife takes pity on him and convinces her husband to give him a parting gift. He tells Gilgamesh of a plant that grows at the bottom of the sea, a plant that can restore youth. It has thorns that will prick the hand, but if he can retrieve it, he will be young again. Gilgamesh ties stones to his feet, sinks to the bottom of the ocean, and finds the plant. He plucks it, enduring the sting of its thorns. He has it. The prize? He hasn't found eternal life, but he's found a second chance, a way to undo the ravages of time. This is where the story becomes a true blueprint for Thorn. The plant at the bottom of the sea. What if it wasn't a plant? What if it was a device? A piece of technology submerged for protection that could rejuvenate cellular structure? The thorns that prick the hand could be a DNA interface, a bioscanner to attune the device to its user. Gilgamesh has the device, but he doesn't use it immediately. He decides to take it back to Uruk to test it on an old man first. A very human, very cautious, and slightly funny decision for a great hero. But on his journey home, he stops to bathe in a cool pool of water. He leaves the plant on the bank. A serpent smells its sweetness, steals it, and sheds its skin, instantly rejuvenated. Gilgamesh is left with nothing. He weeps, his quest a total failure. He returns to Uruk empty-handed and accepts his mortality. This is the moral of the story as it has been told for 5,000 years. But what if the story has a hidden ending? Historians still argue whether the version of the epic we have today is complete, as it was pieced together from dozens of broken tablets found across Mesopotamia. What if the part about losing the device was an addition, a fable created to explain why such a powerful object was no longer in human hands? What if, in the original telling, Gilgamesh didn't lose it? What if he brought it back to Uruk and buried it with himself, in a specially constructed tomb, a vault designed to protect it for all time? The high-pitched whine of the sonic drill starting up snaps you back to the present. The engineers give Thorn a thumbs up. He looks at Reyes. We're ready to breach the first layer. Reyes nods grimly. Do it. The drill bit, a complex array of vibrating metal plates, slowly descends. It touches the ground. There is no roar, no cloud of dust, just a deep, resonant hum that you feel in the bones of your feet. The earth seems to simply dissolve beneath it. You are no longer reading a map. You are following it. The sonic drill sinks into the desert floor with an unnerving grace, the hum a constant, low thrum that vibrates up through your boots. It feels less like drilling and more like phasing, as if the ground itself is agreeing to be parted. While the engineers monitor the drill's progress, Thorne remains glued to his tablet, watching the sensor readings. The air is thick with anticipation. You're punching a hole into a 5,000-year-old secret, and the sheer audacity of it is breathtaking. The mission has entered a new phase, moving from the realm of myth and speculation into hard, physical reality. Thorne's talk of lost technology, of the epic as a blueprint, suddenly seems less like fringe theory and more like a credible intelligence assessment. This idea of forgotten ancient technologies isn't as new or as crazy as it sounds. It's a recurring theme that bubbles up from the fringes of history, a tantalizing what if that refuses to go away. And nowhere is this idea more potent than right here, in the ancient lands of Mesopotamia. You find your mind drifting to one of the most famous and baffling examples, the Baghdad Battery. Sometime in the 1930s, during an archaeological dig near Baghdad, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig found a peculiar set of artifacts. They were small clay jars, each about 6 inches high. Inside each jar was a copper cylinder, and suspended in the center of the cylinder, held in place by an asphalt plug, was an iron rod. Koenig was stumped. They looked for all the world like primitive galvanic cells, like batteries. This is a solid historical fact. The artifacts were found, they are real, and they are currently housed in the National Museum of Uruk, assuming they weren't lost in the looting you've heard so much about. When Koenig published his theory in 1940, it was met with a mix of excitement and deep skepticism. Could the Parthians, who ruled this area around 200 BC, have had electricity? If you filled the jar with an acidic liquid, like vinegar or grape juice, both readily available at the time, the combination of copper and iron would produce a small but steady electrical current. Replicas have been built that generate between 0.5 and 1.5 volts. Not enough to power a light bulb, but certainly enough to be noticeable. The mainstream archaeological consensus is that these jars were likely used for something else. The leading theory is that they were used for electroplating, depositing a thin layer of gold or silver onto a cheaper metal object. It's a clever use of chemistry, but still falls under the umbrella of known ancient capabilities. But, of course, the more exciting theories persist. Some suggest they were used in healing rituals, providing a gentle, tingling electrical stimulation as a form of electroacupuncture. A fringe but fascinating idea. It's easy to imagine a temple priest using mysterious tingling jar to awe supplicants and perform miracles. Remember that old trick of touching a 9-volt battery to your tongue? Now imagine you've never experienced electricity before. It would feel like magic. Historians still argue whether the Baghdad Battery is proof of lost knowledge or simply a misinterpretation of a more mundane object. There are no written records from the period describing their use, no diagrams, no mention of electroplating. There are also no wires or conductive materials found with them. It's an isolated curiosity, a technological dead end. Or is it? What if it's a survivor? A degraded, simplified remnant of a much older, much more advanced science? What if the Parthians didn't invent it, but simply found it, a piece of forgotten tech from an earlier age, and tried to replicate it with the materials they had? This is the kind of thinking that Thorne has infected you with. You start to see history not as a smooth upward curve of progress, but as a series of peaks and valleys. Civilizations rise, achieve incredible things, and then fall, and their knowledge is lost. We remember the pyramids but have no idea how they were truly built. We have Roman concrete that has lasted for 2,000 years, while our modern bridges crumble in 50. What else have we forgotten? What other marvels were lost to the sands of time? A quirky but relevant tidbit is the legend of the ever-burning lamps. Across the ancient and medieval world, there are scattered accounts of tombs being opened to reveal lamps that were still burning. sometimes for thousands of years. The Greek satirist Lucian wrote about one. St. Augustine mentioned another in Egypt. The playwright Plutarch described a lamp that burned over the door of a temple to Jupiter Ammon. Were these all just fanciful stories? Or were they garbled descriptions of a technology that used something other than oil and a wick? Something akin to a long-lasting chemical light, or dare you think it, a self-contained power source like the one Thorne believes is buried beneath your feet. It's the kind of campfire story that gets passed around among lovers of unsolved mysteries, but when you're standing over a real-life impossible artifact, the stories don't seem so silly anymore. We're through the first layer, an engineer calls out. About 3 meters of rock and compacted sediment. We're hitting a void. Reyes steps forward. A void? You mean a chamber? Looks like it, the engineer says, pointing to his own monitor. The drill sensors show an open space. Air pressure is, well, it's stable. It's a sealed environment. A sealed environment. For 5,000 years. The thought sends a shiver down your spine. The air in that chamber hasn't been breathed by a living thing since the last pyramid was being built in Egypt. Thorne looks up from his tablet, his face pale in the green glow of the screens. It matches the German data. This is the upper chamber. The tomb itself. The decoy. He looks at Reyes. Now the real work begins. We need to go deeper. Much deeper. The drill is retracted, and a new component is fitted, a fiber optic camera with a powerful light source. It's lowered carefully into the hole. On the monitor, you see the camera pass through the rough-hewn rock of your entry point and then drop into blackness. The light source activates, illuminating a small circle in an immense, dark space. The engineer maneuvers the camera, panning across the void. And then you see it. The camera sweeps across walls of polished black stone, impossibly smooth. In the center of the chamber, resting on a simple stone dais, is a sarcophagus. It's not gold or ornate, but carved from a single block of dark, featureless stone. It's austere, imposing, and clearly untouched. This is what the German team saw. This is the tomb of Gilgamesh. But Thorne isn't interested. He points to the floor. There, pan down, to the floor. The camera obeys. The floor is made of the same polished black stone. And carved into its center, directly beneath the sarcophagus, is a design. It's a complex, circular pattern of interlocking geometric shapes and cuneiform script. It's beautiful. And it's not just a mosaic. The lines glow with a faint, internal light. It's not a decoration. It's a circuit board. And the sarcophagus isn't a coffin. It's the key. You stare at the image on the monitor, the glowing circuit board carved into the stone floor of the chamber below. The sarcophagus rests in its center like a switch waiting to be thrown. A low murmur ripples through the team. Even the hardened engineers, men used to the practical nuts and bolts world of machinery, are silent and wide-eyed. What you're looking at is not ancient. It's not primitive. It's alien. It feels less like archaeology and more like a scene from a science fiction film, one where the astronauts find the artifact left by the mysterious precursors. Thorne, however, looks vindicated. He taps his screen, cross-referencing the pattern on the floor with a database of symbols you can't see. It's a schematic, he breathes, his voice a mix of awe and academic triumph. A power conduit. The sarcophagus is the primary interface. It has to be moved to activate the sequence. He looks at Reyes, his pale eyes burning with an intensity that's almost frightening. But we're not here to turn it on. We're here for what it powers. We have to bypass it. Reyes holds up a hand. Slow down, Thorne. Before we start messing with whatever that is, I need to know what you really think we're dealing with here. No more talk of myths and lost technology. Give me the theory. The one you tell your bosses behind closed doors. Thorne hesitates for a long moment, the hum of the generators seeming to swell in the silence. He takes a deep breath. The theory, he says, choosing his words carefully, is not mine. It's been a recurring hypothesis in certain circles for decades. It's radical, it's unproven, and most people would call it absurd. But it's the only one that fits all the data. He looks around at your small group, huddled in the desert night. The theory is that the Sumerians did not invent civilization. They were given it. The statement hangs in the air, heavy and preposterous. Doc lets out a short, incredulous laugh, but chokes it back when he sees Thorne's dead serious expression. Given it by whom? Doc asks, his voice barely a whisper. By the ones they called the Anunnaki, Thorne says. The name sends a jolt through you. You've heard it before. Not in a history class, but on late-night documentaries, on conspiracy websites, in books with dramatic, pulpy covers. The Anunnaki, the supposed gods from the sky who came to Earth in ancient times. It's the cornerstone of the ancient astronaut theory, a concept that has been floating on the fringes of public consciousness for years. The historical source for this theory is a reinterpretation of Sumerian texts by authors like Zecharia Sitchin. Sitchin, a scholar of ancient languages, proposed that the Sumerian creation myths were not myths at all, but historical records of encounters with extraterrestrial beings. The Anunnaki, which in Sumerian means something like those who from heaven to earth came, were not gods in a supernatural sense, but flesh and blood astronauts from a planet called Nibiru. Thorne seems to be channeling this exact theory. According to the text, these beings came to Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago. They came in search of a specific resource, gold, not for wealth, but for its unique atmospheric properties. They needed it to repair the failing atmosphere of their home world. He explains the narrative. The Anunnaki established a base of operations in the Persian Gulf and began mining. The work was grueling, and the rank-and-file Anunnaki eventually mutinied. To solve their labor problem, their chief scientists, Enki and Ninhursag, performed a feat of genetic engineering. They took a primitive hominid, early man, and upgraded its DNA with their own. They created a hybrid species, the Homo sapiens, a worker race. They created us to be their slaves, Thorne says, his voice flat, to toil in their mines and build their cities. They taught us the basics, agriculture so we could feed ourselves, animal husbandry, basic laws to keep us organized. They were our first gods. The beings the Bible would later call the Nephilim, the giants in the earth in those days. This connection between the Anunnaki and the Nephilim is a common trope in these theories, linking Mesopotamian myth with Hebrew lore. You can't help but think it's the most elaborate, insane justification for a secret mission you could possibly imagine. A far cry from, they might have WMDs. And yet, the Sumerian texts do talk about their gods in very physical terms. They eat, they drink, they bleed, they fight. They have petty squabbles and complex family dramas. They travel in skyships and wield weapons of terror. A quirky detail often cited by theorists is the depiction of the gods. In Sumerian art, they are often shown wearing what looks uncannily like modern wristwatches. Skeptics call them decorative bracelets, but to believers, they're another clue, another anachronistic piece of technology hiding in plain sight. Gilgamesh, Thorne continues, was special. The texts say he was two-thirds divine. In this interpretation, it means his genetic makeup was more Anunnaki than human. He was part of a ruling class of demigods created to be the intermediaries between the gods and their human workforce. But he had a human flaw. He was mortal. And when his friend Enkidu died, his Anunnaki heritage rebelled against his human fate. He went looking for the source of his creator's longevity. The whole story clicks into place with a terrifying, paranoid logic. The plant of rejuvenation wasn't a plant. It was an Anunnaki medical device. The underworld wasn't a mythical realm of the dead. It was a subterranean Anunnaki base, possibly a hangar, a laboratory, or a power station. The place you are standing over right now, historians still argue, with considerable justification, that this entire theory is based on mistranslations and a willful misreading of mythological poetry. The mainstream academic view is that the Anunnaki were simply the pantheon of gods in the Sumerian religion, personifications of natural forces and societal concepts, much like the gods of Olympus. The debate is fierce, pitting established, peer-reviewed scholarship against a popular, compelling, but evidence-thin narrative. So you're telling us, Reyes says slowly, processing the information, that you believe we are about to break into an alien power station to steal a piece of their tech, which was buried with a half-alien king 5,000 years ago. In essence, yes, Thorne replies, without a hint of irony. We believe the object Gilgamesh retrieved is a portable, self-contained energy source. One capable of powering. Well, we don't fully know what it's capable of, but the projections are staggering. It could change everything. That's why we're here. And that's why we have to get it before someone else does. Or before we accidentally turn the whole thing back on. He points back at the screen, at the glowing pattern on the floor of the chamber. That is the door. And according to the text, there are 7 of them. 7 gates, each with a guardian, that Gilgamesh had to pass through. Doc shakes his head. Guardians? You mean we're expecting monsters? No, Thorne says, his expression grim. I'm expecting automated defense systems. And we have to get past 7 of them. The concept of a world beneath our feet is a primal, universal fear. It's the source of our anxieties about graves, caves, and the unsettling darkness that pools in basements. Thorne's talk of a subterranean Anunnaki base, a real, physical underworld, taps into this deep-seated human instinct. You realize that what made the Sumerian vision of Urkala so terrifying wasn't just the dust and the gloom. It was the simple, horrifying idea of being trapped underground. As the team recalibrates the drill to go deeper, to bypass the decoy tomb and attack the true first layer of the structure below, you find yourself thinking about how many other cultures have shared this belief. The Sumerians weren't alone in their conviction that something profound and powerful lay buried beneath the surface of the world. You let your mind wander through a subterranean museum of global mythology. You start in ancient Greece, a mythology you're more familiar with. Their underworld, Hades, is a much more complex and bureaucratically organized place than the Sumerian Kur. It has distinct regions, the mournful asphodel meadows for the average souls, the blissful Elysian fields for the heroes, and the pit of Tartarus for the truly wicked. There's a clear system of judgment and reward, a feature entirely absent from the Sumerian version. You picture the journey of a Greek soul. You cross the river Styx, paying the ferryman Charon and obelisk, a coin placed in the mouth of the deceased, a practice that is a well-documented historical fact of Athenian burial rites. At the gates of Hades, you don't face a series of gatekeepers who strip you of your identity, but a single, terrifying guardian, Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of hell. He's friendly enough on the way in, but he'll tear to shreds anyone who tries to leave. This idea of a one-way trip is a common thread. The underworld is easy to enter, but impossible to escape. Then you travel north to the cold, stark world of the Norse. Their underworld is even more varied. There's Helheim, ruled by the goddess Hel, a grim but not necessarily evil place for those who died of sickness or old age. It's described as damp and cold, a far cry from the dusty heat of Mesopotamia, a clear reflection of the northern European climate. Then there's the glorious Hall of Valhalla, but that's in Asgard, in the sky, reserved only for warriors who died bravely in battle. The Norse had a branching, multi-tiered afterlife system. It's like they had different travel packages for the deceased, depending on their life choices. A quirky detail of the Norse underworld is the existence of Nastrand, the corpse shore. It was a hall woven from the spines of serpents, with venom dripping from the roof onto the murderers, adulterers, and oath-breakers below. It's one of the few purely punitive realms in Norse mythology, and some scholars believe it was a later addition, influenced by Christian ideas of hell. From there, your mental journey takes you to ancient Egypt. The Egyptian underworld, the Duat, is perhaps the most elaborate and perilous of all. It's not a static place, but a dynamic landscape through which the soul of the deceased pharaoh must travel every night, aboard the sun god Ra's solar barge. The Duat is filled with fiery lakes, demonic serpents, and gates guarded by terrifying deities. To pass, the soul must know the correct spells and passwords, all meticulously written down in the Book of the Dead, a collection of funerary texts that acted as a veritable cheat sheet for the afterlife. This makes the Book of the Dead the Egyptian equivalent of Thorne's interpretation of the Epic of Gilgamesh, a literal guide or map to navigating a dangerous, non-human realm. The parallels are striking. Gilgamesh has to pass 7 gates. The soul in the Duat has to pass numerous gates and pylons. Gilgamesh faces monstrous guardians. The Egyptian soul faces Apep, the serpent of chaos, and a host of other demons. Historians still argue about the extent of the cultural cross-pollination between these ancient civilizations. Did Egypt borrow ideas from Mesopotamia, or was it the other way around? Or did these complex underworld mythologies develop independently, springing from a common human fear of the unknown that lies beyond death? This idea of a hidden subterranean world isn't just confined to myth. It bleeds into folklore and even modern belief. The concept of Agartha, a legendary city said to reside in the Earth's core, is a staple of esoteric and fringe literature. It's often depicted as a paradise, populated by an advanced race of beings who occasionally emerge onto the surface through tunnels hidden in places like the Himalayas or under the pyramids. This is a far more optimistic view than the grim underworlds of old, a subterranean utopia instead of a prison. It's a 19th century invention, a romantic response to an industrializing world, a fantasy of escaping to a purer, more enlightened realm hidden right beneath our feet. It all circles back to where you are now, in the Iraqi desert, standing over what Thorne believes is a real-life underworld. Not a place of ghosts and demons, but of advanced technology and automated defenses. The myths, from this perspective, are just distorted memories. Garbled accounts passed down through generations, turning a security drone into a screeching demon, a laser grid into a fiery lake, and an automated decontamination sequence into the stripping of garments at 7 gates. The fear was real, but the source was misunderstood. The awe was genuine, but the object of worship was technology, not divinity. Drill is repositioned. The engineer's voice cuts through your thoughts. We've analyzed the schematic on the floor. We believe we found a weak point, a service conduit just outside the primary chamber. We can punch through there, bypassing the main door and whatever trigger mechanism is tied to that sarcophagus. It's a back door, Doc mutters. We're breaking into the alien underworld through a maintenance tunnel. The absurdity of it is almost funny. All the epic poetry, all the fear and reverence, and your solution is to find the equivalent of a janitor's closet in the basement. Proceed, Reyes commands. The hum of the sonic drill begins again, deeper this time, more intense. It's chewing through the layers of time, aiming for the soft underbelly of a god's fortress. You check the perimeter again, scanning the empty horizon with your night vision. The silence of the desert seems to have changed. It no longer feels empty. It feels like it's holding its breath, waiting to see what you're about to unleash. You're no longer just comparing mythologies. You're about to step into one. The idea of using unconventional methods to gain an advantage is nothing new to you. In your line of work, it's standard procedure. You use thermal imaging to see through walls, encrypted radios to speak in secrets, and stealth helicopters to appear out of nowhere. You are, in essence, a professional practitioner of applied strangeness. But the kind of strangeness Dr. Thorne represents is on another level entirely. His theory about the Anunnaki and the technological nature of myth is an extreme form of intelligence gathering, one that scrapes the very bottom of the barrel of belief. And yet, the United States government has a documented, albeit bizarre, history of exploring exactly these kinds of paranormal, high-strangeness avenues for intelligence purposes. As the drill continues its slow, vibrating descent, your mind wanders to one of the most peculiar and verifiably true chapters in the history of American espionage, Project Stargate. For over 2 decades, from the 1970s to the 1990s, the CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, spent more than $20 million on a top-secret program to investigate and weaponize psychic abilities. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a declassified historical fact. The program files were released in 1995, revealing a world far weirder than most people could imagine. The primary focus of Project Stargate was a phenomenon called remote viewing. The idea was simple, yet profound. A viewer, a person believed to have psychic talent, would be given a set of geographic coordinates, photograph, or sometimes just a code name for a target. The viewer, often sitting in a bland, windowless room thousands of miles away, would then attempt to describe the location using only the power of their mind. They would sketch images, write down sensory impressions, sights, sounds, smells, and describe structures and activities at the target site. It sounds like pure science fiction, but the military took it very seriously. The program was initiated out of fear. Intelligence reports suggested that the Soviet Union was pouring vast resources into its own psychotronic research, attempting to create psychic weapons and spies. The U.S. felt it had to keep up, creating a psychic arms race that played out in the shadows of the Cold War. It was a joke you might make after a few drinks. Our psychics are better than their psychics. But for the people inside the program, it was a deadly serious business. Some of the results they produced were eerily accurate. One of the program's most famous successes involved a remote viewer named Joseph McMonigle, who was tasked with looking at a suspected Soviet submarine development facility. Sitting in a room in Maryland, he described a massive, low-slung building next to the water. He drew a picture of a submarine being built inside it, but it was a strange submarine, unusually wide with a double hull. Months later, spy satellite photos confirmed the existence of the building and, eventually, the existence of a new massive Typhoon-class submarine, exactly as McMonigle had described it. Of course, there were also spectacular failures. Viewers would describe buildings that weren't there, or misinterpret vague impressions completely. The data was inconsistent, unreliable, and impossible to verify in real time. This is where the core of the scholarly debate lies. Historians still argue whether the successes of Project Stargate were evidence of genuine psychic phenomena or simply the result of statistical noise, lucky guesses, and after-the-fact confirmation bias. Skeptics point out that the viewers were often given subtle clues, and their vague descriptions could be retroactively fitted to almost any target. Believers, including many of the scientists and military officers who ran the program, maintain that something real and unexplained was happening. One of the quirkiest details to emerge from the declassified files was the target list. The remote viewers weren't just tasked with looking at Soviet military bases. They were asked to look at everything. They were directed to find Colonel Gaddafi in Libya. They were tasked to view Jupiter's rings before the Pioneer 10 spacecraft arrived, where one viewer described seeing a ring, something scientists didn't confirm until later. Most fantastically, they were tasked to look back in time to view historical events. One session notoriously involved tasking a viewer to go to Mars, circa 1 million years BC. The viewer described seeing pyramids and obelisks under a stormy sky and tall, thin beings who were fleeing some great cataclysm. It's this last part that connects back to your current mission. If the DIA was willing to use psychics to look for ancient aliens on Mars, is it really such a stretch to believe they deploy a Black Ops team to look for ancient alien tech in Iraq? It's the same operational logic, just a different set of tools. Project Stargate was the software. Your team is the hardware. The goal is the same, to acquire intelligence and technology that falls outside the normal bounds of science. You look over at Thorne. He's not a psychic, but he's operating on a similar principle. He's using ancient texts as his viewing medium, treating mythology as a set of psychic impressions left by a technologically advanced society. He's sifting through the poetic language for hard data, just as a Stargate analyst would sift through a viewer's rambling transcript for actionable intelligence. The entire mission feels like a spiritual successor to Stargate, a field operation born from that same high-risk, high-reward mindset we're in, the engineer announces, his voice tight. The drill has breached the second layer. We have an opening. The deep hum of the drill ceases. The silence that rushes back in is profound. You've done it. You've punched a hole into the side of the great buried structure. You've bypassed the main gate. Reyes turns to you, Doc, and whisper, "Gear up. We're going in. Thorn, you're with us." Thorn nods, his eyes fixed on a hole in the ground as if it's the mouth of a mythical beast. He looks both terrified and ecstatic. You pull on your helmet, the world suddenly framed by the tactical display of your visor. You check your weapon, your comms, your gear. You're no longer a soldier on a security detail. You're a member of an away team, preparing to enter a hostile, unknown environment. The stories of underworlds, the whispers of the Anunnaki, the strange history of psychic spies, it all funnels down to this single moment. You're about to descend into a place that, according to every story ever told about it, is a one-way trip. The descent is claustrophobic and surreal. You're lowered one by one on a powered winch, down the narrow, vibrating borehole the sonic drill created. The walls of the shaft are a strange, glassy substance, the vitrified earth left by the drill's passage. It glows faintly from the lights of your gear. Then you're through. Your boots touch down on a smooth, cool surface. You've arrived. You're inside the structure. The air is cold, sterile, and utterly still. It smells ancient, like ozone and dust that hasn't been disturbed in millennia. You and the rest of the entry team, Reyes, Doc, Whisper, and Thorn, form a defensive circle, your weapon-mounted lights cutting sharp, white cones through the oppressive darkness. The mission has taken a sharp turn. The objective is no longer abstract. It's here. It's real. And the risks are no longer theoretical. As you stand in this impossible place, another piece of the puzzle from the 2003 invasion slots into your mind. A memory from the news reports that saturated the airwaves just a few months ago. The looting of the Uruk National Museum in Baghdad. It was portrayed as one of the great cultural tragedies of the war. As Baghdad fell and coalition forces were preoccupied with securing the city, the museum was left largely unguarded. For several days, it was chaos. A mob of looters ransacked the galleries, smashing display cases, stealing priceless artifacts, and damaging those too large to carry. The images were heartbreaking: shattered pottery, empty pedestals, and the scattered detritus of 5,000 years of human history trampled underfoot. The official reports claimed that over 15,000 objects were stolen, catastrophic loss for world heritage. This is the accepted historical fact of the event. But as you stand here, in a place that certain factions of your own government desperately wanted to keep secret, you begin to wonder, was the looting really just a random act of chaos? Or was it something more? Distraction? A cover for a much more specific, targeted theft? The idea isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Intelligence operations often thrive on chaos. A riot, a protest, a fire. These are perfect opportunities to conduct a swift, deniable operation. While the world's cameras were focused on the heartbreaking images of random looters carrying out broken pots and cylinder seals, could a small professional team have entered the museum with a very specific shopping list? Could they have gone straight for the records room, the deep archives, the unpublished excavation notes? This is where the debate amongst some investigators and conspiracy theorists begins. Historians still argue about the true number of stolen artifacts and the nature of the thieves. While many items were indeed stolen by a random mob, many were later recovered or returned. However, a significant number of the most valuable items, particularly the small, easily transportable ones like cylinder seals and cuneiform tablets, remain missing. The more pointed theories suggest that the real target wasn't the public galleries at all, but the museum's basement storage and archives. This is where the uncatalogued finds are kept, the duplicates, the broken pieces, and most importantly, the original field notes from a century of archaeological digs across Iraq. Imagine a team, not of looters, but of covert operatives disguised as looters. They ignore the gold and the famous statues. They go straight for the steel cabinets in the basement. They're not looking for treasure, they're looking for information. Specifically, any unpublished data from the German team at Uruk. Any notes from earlier digs that mentioned strange anomalies. Any tablet that hadn't yet been translated, one that might hold a key, a password, or a warning about the very place you're now standing in. In this scenario, the general looting wasn't the mission. It was the smokescreen. Brilliantly effective one. Who would notice a few missing file folders and clay tablets when the world believed the Mask of Warka had been stolen? You think of Dr. Thorne and his incredible wealth of information. He knew about the German team's discovery before it was public. He has access to their raw data. He has schematics of this place. Where did he get it? Did his people snatch it from museum archives during the chaos? Or did they get it from the German archaeologists themselves, through coercion or some other, quieter means? The mission you're on is clearly the culmination of a long and complex intelligence-gathering operation. A quirky detail about the museum looting adds another layer of strangeness. Among the most famous pieces that went missing and were later recovered was the Warka vase. It's a huge, intricately carved alabaster vase from Uruk, a foundational piece of narrative art. When it was returned, it was in pieces broken. But a few months later, another item was returned, this time anonymously. It was an unassuming, almost crude-looking statue of a Sumerian king. Experts were baffled as to why the looters would take such a thing and then bother to return it. What if it wasn't the statue they were after, but something hidden inside it? A hollow space containing a map, a key, or a data storage device made of some unknown material. They break it open, take what they need, and then return the empty vessel to muddy the waters. It's a classic intelligence dead-drop maneuver. Your light sweeps across the chamber you're in. It's a perfect cube, about 50 feet on each side. The walls are made of that same polished, jet-black stone that feels more grown than quarried. There are no carvings, no decorations. The only feature is a single, massive door on the far wall. It's a solid slab of the same black material, seamless with the wall itself, distinguished only by a faint, glowing line around its perimeter. That's the first gate, Thorne says, his voice hushed and reverent. According to the text, it was guarded by a gatekeeper named Nettie. I don't see any gatekeeper, Doc says, his own light probing the corners of the room. Reyes raises his rifle, aiming it at the center of the door. His tactical display is linked to the whole team's. I do, he says, his voice tight. Dead center of that door. There's an energy signature. Faint, but it's there. Something's in a standby state. Waiting. You look at the door. It's a flat, dead surface. But through your advanced optics, you can see it too. A tiny, almost imperceptible shimmer in the air right in front of the door. A heat signature with no heat source. Something is there. Something invisible. And you have to get past it. The stories were right. There's a guardian. It just doesn't have wings or a terrifying face. It's something far more efficient. And it's just been waiting for someone to come along and wake it up. The invisible guardian hums into space before the great black door, its presence a palpable weight in the sterile air. Your tactical visor paints a faint, shimmering distortion where it waits, an energy field you can't see, but your technology can. This isn't a monster from a myth. It's a sentry drone, a piece of automated security that has been on standby for 5,000 years. The quiet confidence you felt a moment ago evaporates, replaced by a primal fear. You're not just explorers anymore. You're intruders. And you just tripped the silent alarm. Reyes lowers his rifle slightly. Thorne, you got any bright ideas from your old books on how to get past this thing? Thorne is staring at the shimmer, his face a mask of academic fascination and raw terror. In the myth, the traveler had to give the gatekeeper, Nettie, an article of clothing, a piece of their royal power to be allowed entry. It was a symbolic stripping away of identity. Great, Doc mutters from beside you. So I just throw my helmet at it. He's trying for a joke, but his voice is strained. It's a password system, Thorne says, his mind racing. A challenge response protocol. It's not looking for clothing. It's looking for a specific input, a key, maybe a sonic frequency, a light pattern, or a biosignature. As he says the word biosignature, the shimmering in the air intensifies. A low-frequency hum starts to fill the chamber, vibrating in your chest. A thin horizontal line of red light appears on the surface of the door, scanning your group from left to right. It feels analytical, like it's taking your measure. "It's scanning us," Whisper says, his voice unnervingly calm. "It's reading our vitals. Heart rate, body temp, maybe more. This is the kind of situation your unit was built for, but not in this context. You're used to facing threats you can see, enemies you can fight. How do you fight a 5,000-year-old security system? This isn't a conventional military operation anymore. It's something else. It needs a different kind of soldier." You imagine a parallel unit, a team designed specifically for this kind of work. A fictional Black Ops group, a spiritual successor to the real-life Monuments Men of World War II. The original Monuments Men were a team of art historians, museum curators, and architects who went into the field to rescue and protect cultural treasures from the Nazis. A noble, well-documented historical fact. But what if there was another, deeper-level group? A unit tasked not with saving art, but with securing artifacts of paranormal or extraterrestrial significance. Let's call them the Anomalous Acquisitions and Containment Directorate, or AACD. A very bland, bureaucratic name for a very strange job. You can picture them. They don't wear standard military kit. They are the men and women in black, but with tactical gear. They are part scientist, part soldier, part archaeologist, part exorcist. Their ranks are filled with disgraced physicists, defrocked priests, historians who entertained one too many fringe theories, and soldiers who saw something they couldn't explain in the field and didn't dismiss it. Dr. Thorne would be a prime candidate for recruitment. Their mission is simple: to be the rapid response team for any discovery that falls outside the known laws of physics or history. A Roman temple found with a working fusion reactor? That's their call. A Viking longship dug up in Minnesota with a star map carved into its hull? They're on the next plane. They would have been the ones to quietly acquire the Baghdad battery, spearing it away to a lab so deep underground it makes this place look like a penthouse. They are the keepers of the government's strangest secrets. A quirky but essential part of their standard operating procedure would be a total media blackout. They don't just classify their findings. They actively run disinformation campaigns to make anyone who stumbles upon the truth look like a fool. They are the reason the term conspiracy theorist was weaponized. They would be the ultimate pragmatists. They wouldn't care if an artifact was divine, alien, or from another dimension. They'd just ask, can we understand it? Can we replicate it? Can we use it as a weapon? Historians still argue whether governments today secretly investigate paranormal claims. While projects like Stargate are now declassified, it's a logical leap to assume that the interest hasn't just vanished. It has simply gone deeper, becoming more compartmentalized and harder to detect. The AACD is the logical endpoint of that thinking. And if that team were here right now, they would have a protocol for this. They would have a device designed to mimic biosignatures, to broadcast codes, to pacify ancient sentinels. But you don't have that. You have rifles, explosives, and Dr. Thorne, who is frantically scrolling through his tablet. There's a passage, Thorne mutters, in a fragmented text. It's an incantation to Ereshkigal, the queen of this realm. It's not part of the main epic. It's obscure. Most scholars dismiss it as gibberish. Does it say how to knock? Reyes presses, not exactly. It's a supplication, a recognition of authority. It speaks of the 7 and 7 guardians, the divine decrees they protect. He looks up, a wild idea dawning on his face. It's not about giving something up. It's about acknowledging you have nothing to give. It's about admitting you are a powerless mortal before a superior force. It's a statement of humility. He looks at the scanning beam. It's looking for a specific physiological state. Not aggression, not fear. Total passivity. A lowered heart rate. A calm state of mind. Like a monk in meditation, Reyes looks at him, then at the rest of you. You want us to, what? Meditate at it. Before anyone can answer, the red scanning line stops on Thorn. He's the only one not in body armor, the only one not holding a weapon. His heart rate, though likely elevated by the situation, is probably the lowest in the group. The hum from the Guardian changes pitch, becoming a higher, more inquisitive tone. It's focused on you, Thorn, Whisper says. Thorn holds up his empty hands. I am a servant of the dust, he says, his voice surprisingly steady. He's reciting a line from the obscure text. I bring no crown. I carry no scepter. I am naked before the gate. The shimmering energy field contracts, coalescing into a single, brilliant point of light in front of Thorn's chest. It hovers there for a second. The rest of you hold your breath, fingers tensed on your triggers. This is it, the moment of truth. Then, with a sound like a deep, resonant chime, the point of light vanishes. The hum ceases, and the glowing line around a massive black door brightens, turning from a soft white to a brilliant blue. A deep, grinding sound echoes through the chamber, the sound of stone moving on stone for the first time in 5 millennia. The first gate is opening. Thorn's ridiculous, academic, completely insane plan actually worked. You've just defeated a 5,000-year-old piece of sentient security technology by reciting bad poetry at it. This mission just keeps getting stranger. The great stone door grinds open, not swinging on a hinge, but retracting sideways into the wall with a precision that defies its apparent weight. The movement is slow, deliberate, revealing a corridor that seems to absorb the light from your tactical lamps. The air that flows out is even colder, carrying the scent of deep earth and something else, a faint metallic odor, like the air after a lightning strike. The first gate is open. You've passed the first test. Reyes gives a sharp hand signal forward, and you move, stepping from the antechamber into the structure proper. As you step across the threshold, you feel a strange sensation, like a mild static shock across your entire body. It's a momentary tingle, gone as soon as it arrives. You feel that? Doc asks over the comms. Some kind of atmospheric containment field, Whisper suggests. Decontamination, maybe. Or a counter, Thorn adds, his voice awed. It just counted us. It knows there are 5 of us inside now. The thought is unsettling. The system is not just passive, it's aware. It's tracking you. The corridor ahead is long and straight, maybe 200 yards. Like the antechamber, it's constructed from that seamless, polished black stone. The only light is your own. You proceed in a standard tactical formation, a diamond with Thorn in the center, your weapon scanning every shadow. The silence is absolute, broken only by the soft scuff of your boots and your own breathing, loud and ragged in your ears. This is the moment when a mission like this gets a code name. In the planning stages, it's just a file number, a string of digits and letters. But once boots are on the ground, once the operation is real, it earns a name. Something deceptively bland, designed to be meaningless to anyone who might overhear it. Something like Operation Desert Bloom. It's a perfect piece of bureaucratic misdirection. It sounds like an agricultural initiative, a humanitarian project to build irrigation systems. No one would ever associate it with a Black Ops mission to plunder a mythological underworld for alien technology. It's a joke, a cynical bit of wordplay on the idea of making the desert bloom with a new, world-altering power source. You can almost picture the clean-shaven man from the briefing tent coming up with it, a thin, self-satisfied smile on his face. The official objectives of Operation Desert Bloom, as you now understand them, are threefold. Primary objective, locate and retrieve the asset. The object Thorn believes is a portable Anunnaki energy source. Secondary objective, secure any and all related technology, data, or artifacts found at the site. This is a catch-all for anything else you might find, from a simple tablet to another piece of functional hardware. Tertiary objective, sanitization. Once the primary and secondary objectives are complete, you are to erase any and all evidence of your presence. The sonic borehole is to be filled, the surface site sterilized, and the entrance to the structure sealed, permanently if possible. Leave no trace. The official record must show that Operation Desert Bloom never happened. This kind of mission protocol is not without historical precedent. During the Cold War, the U.S. ran a top-secret project called Project Azorian. This is a declassified historical fact. In 1968, a Soviet Gulf II class submarine, the K-129, sank in the Pacific Ocean. It was carrying nuclear-armed ballistic missiles. The Soviets couldn't find it, but the U.S. did. The CIA, under the cover of a deep-sea mining operation bankrolled by the eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes, built a massive, technologically advanced ship called the Hughes Glomar Explorer. Its mission was to lift the entire 2,000-ton submarine from a depth of 3 miles. The cover story was that Hughes was mining for manganese nodules on the ocean floor. It was a brilliant fiction, providing a plausible reason for building such a unique vessel. The mission was only partially successful. The submarine broke apart during the lift, but they did recover a portion of it, including 2 nuclear torpedoes, codebooks, and other valuable intelligence. The entire operation was a masterpiece of technological innovation and clandestine misdirection. Operation Desert Bloom feels like the spiritual child of Project Azorian, the technologically audacious retrieval mission hidden behind a bland and boring cover story. As you move down the corridor, you start to notice details. The floor is not perfectly flat. There are incredibly fine grooves etched into it, forming a pattern too complex to be decorative. They're conduits, Thorne whispers, pointing his light at them. Or data cables. Embedded in the stone, a quirky but unsettling thought crosses your mind. What if the structure itself is alive? Not in a biological sense, but in a computational one. What if the walls, the floor, the very stone it's made of, is a form of exotic computer? A solid-state, crystalline processor the size of a skyscraper. The grooves aren't just conduits. They're the neural pathways of the building's mind. The idea is both magnificent and horrifying. You're not just walking through a building, you're walking through a brain. Historians still argue about the purpose of large-scale ancient constructions that seem to have no obvious practical use. Sites like Stonehenge in England or the Nazca Lines in Peru. Were they temples? Astronomical observatories? Or were they something else, something we lack the context to understand? The debate often boils down to a failure of imagination, a tendency to project our own ideas of what is useful or sacred onto the past. Perhaps some of these structures were machines, whose function we can no longer even guess at. You reach the end of the corridor. It opens into another vast cubic chamber, identical to the antechamber. And on the far side, there is another massive, seamless black door. The second gate. This time, there is no shimmering guardian waiting for you. Instead, the center of the door glows with a soft blue light. As you get closer, you see that the light is coming from a circular panel, about a foot in diameter, set flush into the door. It's covered in a complex array of Sumerian cuneiform symbols, but they are not carved. They are glowing symbols on a dark screen. It's a keypad, Whisper says, his voice full of disbelief. A 5,000-year-old touchscreen keypad. Thorne steps forward, his eyes wide. He looks at his tablet, then back at the door. The second guardian in the myth required a specific verbal charm. A password. He looks at the glowing symbols. I think I know the sequence. It's a numerical code, hidden in the meter of the poem. He reaches out a trembling hand. You and the rest of the team raise your weapons, half expecting the door to vaporize him. He touches the first symbol. It flares brightly, and a low chime echoes through the chamber. He presses another, and another. He's inputting a code, drawn from a dead language, into a piece of impossible technology. Operation Desert Bloom is in full swing, and it's getting weirder with every step. Thorne's finger hovers over the glowing cuneiform keypad. The silence in the chamber so complete you can hear the faint hum of the electronics in your helmet. He presses the final symbol in the sequence he's derived from the epic's poetic meter. For a moment, nothing happens. You feel a collective tension clench in your gut. Did he get it wrong? Is some catastrophic defense about to activate? Then the entire keypad flashes green once, and the second gate slides open with the same eerie, silent grace as the first. The way is clear. As you step through into the next corridor, you can't help but be struck by the sheer scale and mystery of this place. The precision of its construction, the advanced technology of its gates, it's all so far beyond the scope of any known ancient culture. This entire Operation Desert Bloom, is predicated on a single stunning piece of intelligence, the discovery of the structure itself. You wonder how they found it. How did someone in a command center in Virginia or Nevada first lay eyes on this impossibility buried deep under their rocky desert? The answer, you realize, would have come from the sky. Your most powerful and secret eyes are not on the ground. They're in orbit. The mission almost certainly began with a satellite. Not a normal spy satellite taking pictures, but something far more sophisticated. A satellite equipped with advanced ground-penetrating radar, GPR, or perhaps a technology even more exotic, like a gravimetric sensor or a muon detector. Ground-penetrating radar is a real, established technology. It works by sending pulses of radar energy into the ground and listening for the echoes. Different materials reflect the signal differently, allowing scientists to create a 3D map of what's underground. Archaeologists use it all the time to find buried walls, roads, and tombs without ever digging a hole. This is a common historical fact in modern archaeology. But the GPR used by civilians is limited, capable of penetrating only a few dozen feet in ideal conditions. The military-grade versions, however, are a different story. The kind of technology rumored to be aboard spy satellites like the Lacrosse/Onyx series is orders of magnitude more powerful. These satellites, flying in low Earth orbit, are theoretically capable of mapping underground structures with incredible resolution, potentially seeing hundreds of feet down. It's a technology that is, of course, highly classified. But it's the only logical explanation. You can picture the scene. An analyst in a darkened, secure room at the National Reconnaissance Office is reviewing data from a routine scan of southern Iraq. The satellite is probably looking for hidden bunkers, underground weapons caches, the kind of things you'd expect to find in a hostile state. But then an anomaly appears on their screen. It's not a bunker. The shape is wrong. It's too deep, too symmetrical, too perfect. The analyst flags it. The image gets passed up the chain of command. Experts are brought in. Geologists confirm it's not a natural formation. Engineers confirm it's artificial. And then someone connects its location to the ancient city of Uruk and the legends of Gilgamesh. A quiet, world-changing discovery made by a silent sentinel in the cold vacuum of space. But even GPR has its limits. A fringe but compelling theory suggests an even more advanced technology, gravimetric imaging. A gravimeter is a device that measures tiny fluctuations in the local gravitational field. A large, dense object underground, like a buried building, would have a slightly stronger gravitational pull than the surrounding soil. A void or a chamber would have a weaker one. Satellites like the GRACE mission have mapped Earth's gravity field with stunning precision, revealing ocean currents and movements in the planet's crust. It's a leap, but a military version of this tech could theoretically detect a structure like the one you're in, registering it as a massive, unnaturally regular anomaly in the local gravity. Historians still argue about the extent of ancient astronomical knowledge. We know sites like the Great Pyramid and Stonehenge have precise celestial alignments. But was this just for religious or agricultural purposes, or did they have a deeper understanding of cosmic forces? One of the quirkiest rabbit holes in this area of study is the theory of archaeoacoustics, the idea that ancient structures were designed to manipulate sound for specific purposes, like inducing altered states of consciousness. Could they also have been designed to manipulate other, more subtle energies? Could this structure have some kind of low-level energy signature that, while invisible for millennia, was just strong enough to be detected by our most sensitive 21st century instruments? The corridor you're in now is different from the first. The walls are not smooth. They are covered in what looks like a dense, three-dimensional latticework of crystalline fibers. They glow with a soft, internal white light, illuminating the passage with a gentle, shadowless radiance. It's like walking through the inside of a fiber optic cable. It's beautiful, Doc whispers over the comms, and he's right. It's breathtakingly beautiful. The light shifts and pulses slowly, as if the walls are breathing. It's a data hub, Thorne says, his voice filled with reverence. He reaches out a hand but stops himself just short of touching the wall. The entire history of this place, the knowledge of its builders, it might be stored in these walls. Encoded in light, Reyes isn't admiring the view. It's also disorienting. Keep your eyes forward. We don't know what this light show is designed to do. He's right. The pulsing light is hypnotic. If you stare at it for too long, you start to feel a strange sense of vertigo. It could be another security measure, a non-lethal way to confuse and disable intruders. A psychological weapon woven into the very architecture of the building. You focus on the end of the corridor, where the third gate awaits. As you get closer, you see it's different yet again. There is no door, no visible barrier at all. The corridor just is. But you can't pass. An invisible wall stands in your way. There's no shimmer, no hum. Just an impassable, unseen barrier. Whisper holds up a hand, stopping the team. He pulls a small sensor from his pack and analyzes the space. It's a kinetic field, he reports. A solid wall of force. If you try to walk through it, it'd be like hitting concrete at 100 miles an hour. The third guardian, Thorne says. The one that cannot be faced. He looks at the beautiful, pulsing walls around you. The key isn't at the gate. The key is the corridor itself. He points to his tablet, showing a complex waveform analysis. The light pulses aren't random. It's a sequence. A code. We have to replicate it. Replicate it with what? Reyes asks. Thorne points to the tactical lights on your weapons. With those, we have to match the frequency and rhythm of the pulses. We have to harmonize with the building. This is your next test. A challenge that requires not brute force, not esoteric knowledge, but perfect mimicry and timing. You are no longer just intruders. You have to become part of the system to pass through it. You have to learn to speak the building's language of light. The task is absurd, a challenge straight out of a video game. You have to use the lights on your multi-million-dollar assault rifles to mimic a pulsating alien light show to open an invisible force field. It's a ridiculous, high-stakes game of Simon Says. Whisper, your quiet communications and tech specialist, takes the lead. He syncs his visor's optical sensors to Thorne's tablet, which is analyzing the complex rhythm of the corridor's light. It's a call and response, Whisper says, his voice a low, focused hum. The north wall flashes a sequence, then the south wall answers. It's a duet. We don't just have to match the rhythm, we have to become the third instrument in the orchestra. He assigns each of you a part of the sequence. Reyes will take the opening beat, Doc the harmony, you'll handle the bridge. It's a symphony of light, and your guns are the instruments. On my mark, Whisper commands. 3, 2, 1 now. You click your light on and off, trying to match the rapid, staccato pattern displayed on your visor. Reyes's beam flashes next to you, a deeper, slower pulse. Doc's light joins in a steady, rhythmic thrum. For a few seconds, you're a mess, a clumsy, discordant jumble of lights. The force field at the end of the hall remains stubbornly in place. Again, Whisper orders. Find the rhythm. Feel it. You try again. This time you ignore the technical readouts and just watch the walls. You let the hypnotic pulse guide your hand. Flash, flash, pause, flash. You find the beat. Reyes finds his. Doc syncs up. For a brief, magical moment, your three beams of light join the pulsating dance of the corridor. You're in harmony with the ancient alien machine, and the force field vanishes. Just like that. The way is open. Move, Reyes barks, snapping you out of the trance. Now, you hurry through the now open gateway, and as soon as the last person is through, the force field snaps back into existence behind you. You've passed the third gate. You're getting deeper. This entire sequence, the discovery from space, the high-tech infiltration, brings you back to the core of the mission. You're not just here for a mythical artifact. You're here because this structure represents a monumental threat and an even greater opportunity. Someone in a very high position looked at the satellite data and decided that this was not something that could be left alone. The decision was made to act, to breach this place and seize its secrets. This is where the planning phase of Operation Desert Bloom would have gotten truly serious. This is where they decided to drill. The sonic drill your team used to get in is a marvel of modern engineering. But the concept of drilling into the earth to find secrets is an old one. For decades, during the Cold War, the USA and the USSR were locked in another, less famous race, a race to the center of the earth, or at least as far down as they could possibly go. This is a fascinating historical fact. The American effort was Project Mohole, an ambitious plan to drill through the Earth's crust under the Pacific Ocean to retrieve a sample of the mantle, the layer just below the crust. It was a scientific moonshot, aiming to unlock the secrets of our planet's geology. The project, however, was plagued by mismanagement and cost overruns, and was eventually canceled by Congress in the 1960s after drilling only a few hundred feet into the seafloor. The Soviets, on the other hand, were far more successful. Their project was the Kola Super Deep Borehole. Starting in 1970, they drilled on and off for over 2 decades into the Kola Peninsula near the Russian border with Norway. They weren't trying to reach the mantle. They were just trying to see how far they could go. They reached a final depth of 12,262 meters, over 7.6 miles straight down. It remains the deepest artificial point on Earth. They didn't find any underworlds or alien bases, but they did make incredible scientific discoveries. They found microscopic fossils of single-celled organisms at depths of over 4 miles, where it was previously thought life couldn't exist. They found that the rock at that depth was saturated with water, which was a complete surprise. And they encountered unexpectedly high temperatures of 180 degrees Celsius, 356 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what ultimately stopped the drilling. The heat was too intense for their equipment to function. A quirky and completely fabricated legend that sprung up around the Kola borehole was the well-to-hell sound recording. In the late 1990s, a story circulated on the internet that the Russian scientist had lowered a microphone into the borehole and recorded the sounds of tormented souls screaming in hell. It was, of course, a hoax, a cleverly edited audio track from a horror movie paired with the story of the borehole. But the fact that so many people believed it speaks to that same primal fear of what lies beneath our feet. It's a modern myth, the technological equivalent of Orpheus descending into Hades, so the technology to drill deep exists. Your team's sonic drill is just a faster, more surgical version of what the Soviets used. At Kola, instead of taking 20 years, it took a few hours. This is the crux of Operation Desert Bloom's feasibility. Historians still argue whether Cold War-era megaprojects like the space race or the deep drilling programs were purely for scientific discovery, or if they had hidden military applications. Was Project Mohole really just about geology, or were they also testing technology for undersea bases or missile silos? The lines, as always, are blurry. You have now entered the 4th level of the complex. The environment changes again. The glowing walls are gone, replaced by the same smooth, black stone. But the air is different. It's heavy, humid, and filled with a low, powerful thrumming sound. The floor vibrates gently beneath your boots. You can feel it in your bones. It's the feeling of immense power barely contained. You're in a corridor that curves gently, leading you deeper into the source of the sound. The metallic ozone smell is stronger here. The thrumming gets louder, resonating in your skull. You round a final corner and stop dead in your tracks. The corridor opens onto a vast cavern. So vast, your lights can't find the walls or the ceiling. In the center of this cavern, suspended in a web of crackling energy beams, is a colossal, perfectly spherical object. It's about the size of a house, made of a swirling liquid metal material that shifts and changes color. It's the source of the thrumming, the source of the power for this entire complex. My God, Thorn breathes, his voice shaking. It's the heart. It's the power core. It's not just a power core. It's the fourth guardian. And it is very, very much awake. You stand on a precipice, gazing into the cavern at the colossal, swirling sphere of energy. It's not just a power source. It has a presence, a personality. The thrumming it emits isn't just a mechanical vibration. It feels like a heartbeat. The air crackles with raw power, and the hairs on your arms stand on end. Your senses are overwhelmed. The low, bass-heavy hum that vibrates your skeleton, the sharp, clean smell of ozone that prickles your nostrils, the mesmerizing, shifting colors of the sphere itself, from a cool blue to a fiery orange. You feel infinitesimally small, a microbe in the presence of a star. This is Gate 4, Thorn says, his voice barely a whisper against the overwhelming hum. The texts are vague here. They describe it as a roaring furnace that consumes all who approach. Gilgamesh only passed it by averting his gaze and holding a token of the gods. Averting our gaze isn't going to work, Thorn, Reyes says, his eyes scanning the cavern. And we're fresh out of god tokens. Whisper, what are your sensors telling you? Whisper is hunched over his handheld scanner, his face illuminated by its green glow. The energy readings are off the charts. It's putting out everything. Gravimetric, electromagnetic, thermal. It's a controlled singularity, a miniature, stable black hole. Or something like it. The energy beams holding it in place are the only thing stopping it from, well, unmaking this entire cavern. A controlled singularity. A baby black hole, tamed and harnessed as a power plant. The sheer, mind-breaking audacity of the physics involved is too much to comprehend. This isn't just advanced technology. This is God-level engineering. The kind of thing that makes a nuclear reactor look like a campfire. So, how do we get past it? Doc asked, stating the obvious, terrifying question. The path forward must be on the other side of this cavern. The sphere is the guardian, Thorn muses. And it's a furnace. It consumes things. Maybe like the first gate, it wants an offering. We are not throwing one of our guys in there, Reyes says flatly. No, not a person, Thorn clarifies. Energy. The texts say it consumes. It's a power source, but maybe it's also a power sink. It's hungry. He points to the energy beams that hold the sphere in place. They originate from massive conduits set into the cavern walls. If we could overload one of those conduits, create a surge of power, it might distract the core intelligence of the system. It would be focused on restabilizing the field, creating a window for us to slip past. It's a crazy plan. Intentionally destabilizing a contained black hole. What could possibly go wrong? It's the single most reckless idea you've ever heard in your life. It makes charging a machine gun nest seem like a sensible career choice. And yet, it's the only idea you have. This is the moment where your training truly kicks in. You are a special forces operator. You are trained to use the tools at your disposal in creative and unconventional ways. Your primary tool is a rifle, designed to put holes in things. But you also carry specialized explosives. Not big, dumb C4 charges, but small, precise breaching charges designed to cut through steel doors without bringing the whole building down. Reyes looks at you. Think you can place a charge on one of those conduits without getting fried? You look at the conduit. It's 100 yards away, across a slick, polished black floor. The air between you and it is buzzing with static energy. It will be a very long, very lonely walk. Can do, Sergeant. You say, your voice steadier than you feel, As you prepare the charge, you feel a profound sense of dislocation, as if you've slipped through a crack in reality. You are a 21st century soldier, about to use military-grade explosives to manipulate a piece of prehistoric alien technology. You are a spear point of modernity, jabbing at the heart of an ancient myth. This feeling, this blend of the hypermodern and the deeply ancient, is a strange but recurring theme in human experience. Consider the historical fact of Roman dodecahedrons. These are small hollow objects made of bronze or stone, with 12 flat pentagonal faces, each with a circular hole of a different diameter. They're found all over the territory of the former Roman Empire, but nobody knows what they were for. There are no written accounts of them. Theories range from them being candlesticks, to dice, to survey instruments, to children's toys. Historians still argue furiously about their purpose. It's a perfect example of an artifact from a highly advanced and well-documented civilization that remains a complete mystery. We have their technology, but we've lost the user manual. Now imagine a Roman legionary, equipped with the best armor and weapons of his time, stumbling into a place like this. What would he think? He would have no context for it. He would fall back on the only language he had for such things, the language of gods and monsters. The energy sphere would be Vulcan's forge. The glowing walls would be the work of Mercury. He would be experiencing the same awe and terror you are, just interpreting it through a different cultural lens. A quirky, related tidbit is the story of Sir Francis Drake and the island of natives who supposedly worshipped his ship's bilge pump. The story goes that when his ship, the Golden Hind, was leaking, the natives were amazed by the pump that seemed to create water from nowhere. They saw it as a god. While likely apocryphal, it illustrates the principle famously articulated by Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. You are the native, and this cavern is your bilge pump. Ready? You say over the comms, the small, shaped charge clutched in your hand. Go, Reyes orders. You break from cover and sprint across the slick floor. The static in the air is intense, a physical pressure against your skin. Your suit's electronics crackle and hiss. You keep your eyes fixed on the target, the base of the nearest energy conduit. You run faster than you've ever run in your life, fueled by adrenaline and a deep, abiding desire not to be consumed by a baby black hole. You reach the conduit, a massive pillar of the same black stone, humming with unimaginable power. You slap the charge onto its base, arm it, and turn, sprinting back to the relative safety of the corridor entrance. Charge is set. You pant, sliding into cover next to document, ready to blow on your command. Reyes looks at Thorn. This better work, Professor. He keys his comms. All stations, fire in the hole. He presses the detonator. The breaching charge detonates with a sharp, cracking sound that is strangely muffled by the overwhelming hum of the cavern. It's not a large explosion, but it's precise. A brilliant white flash illuminates the base of the conduit, and a chunk of the black humming stone is blasted away. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happens. Then, the energy beam connected to that conduit flickers violently. The entire cavern is plunged into a strobing, chaotic light show as the system struggles to compensate. The deep, steady hum of the central sphere changes pitch, rising to an ear-splitting shriek of alarm. It's the sound of a wounded machine. The sphere itself begins to pulse erratically, its liquid metal surface boiling with angry red and purple light. It's working. Thorn yells over the noise. The core intelligence is distracted. It's trying to rear out power and stabilize the containment field. Look, he's right. On the far side of the cavern, a section of the wall has become transparent, revealing a corridor behind it. It's a temporary doorway, a service route that has opened up in response to the emergency. It's your chance. That's our exit. Go, go, go. Reyes commands, and you all break from cover, sprinting across the cavern floor again. This time, the run is even more terrifying. The floor is vibrating so intensely it's hard to keep your footing. The air is filled with arcs of static electricity that snap and crackle around you. You don't dare look at the furious, shrieking sphere in the center of the room. You just run, head down, following the person in front of you, a mad dash through the heart of a dying god's power plant. You dive through the opening in the wall just as a massive arc of energy lashes out from the sphere, striking the spot where you were seconds ago. The black stone floor boils and melts, turning to slag. You made it by a fraction of a second. The transparent wall solidifies behind you, and the deafening shriek from the cavern is instantly muted, leaving only a faint, angry hum that you can still feel in your teeth. You're safe. For now. You've passed the fourth, fifth, and sixth gates in one desperate, reckless push. The text described Gilgamesh passing through a garden of stone, then meeting the boatman Yorshinabi, and then crossing the waters of death. You've just done the 21st century equivalent. You navigated the crystalline data hub, you bypassed the power core by creating a crisis, and you sprinted across the threshold just as death lashed out at you. The parallels are uncanny. You're not just following the epic as a map. You're reliving its trials in a new technological language. You find yourselves in a small, circular chamber. The air here is calm, the silence profound after the chaos of the power cavern. In the center of the room is a raised platform, and on that platform is a single, vertical slab of what looks like polished obsidian. It's about 10 feet tall and 4 feet wide. There's a single hand-shaped indentation glowing in its center. This is it, Thorn says, his voice filled with a quiet trembling. The final gate. The seventh gate. The entrance to what the epic calls the far-off place. The place where Utnapishtim dwells. According to the myth, this final gate requires the ultimate act of submission, the final piece of the password. You must prove you are worthy to enter the inner sanctum. What's the key this time, Thorn? Reyes asks, his breathing still heavy from the run. Another poem? Another light show? No, Thorn says, looking at the handprint. This one is a more personal. The texts say Gilgamesh had to prove his lineage. He had to prove he was of the blood of the gods. He looks from a handprint to his own hand. It needs a biosignature. Not just a passive scan like the first gate. It needs direct contact. It needs to read the DNA of the person trying to enter. This is the ultimate lock. A genetic key. Only someone with the correct genetic makeup can open this door. It's a security measure that is, for all intents and purposes, perfect. You can't fake it. You can't force it. You either have the right blood, or you don't. The concept of using lineage and bloodlines as a key is a deeply ancient one. The right to rule, in almost every ancient culture, was passed down through blood. The pharaohs of Egypt provide a perfect historical example. The throne was passed from father to son, and to keep the divine bloodline pure, pharaohs often married their own sisters or half-sisters. The famous King Tutankhamun, for example, was the product of such an incestuous union, a fact confirmed by DNA analysis of his mummy. This practice, which seems abhorrent to us, was a sacred duty to them, a way of ensuring that the divine essence of the ruler was not diluted. Historians still argue about the practical genetic consequences of this royal inbreeding. Did it lead to the physical ailments and early deaths that plagued so many royal lines, like Tutankhamun's clubfoot? Or were the political and religious imperatives of a pure bloodline considered more important than the health of any individual ruler? It's a stark reminder that our ancestors' motivations were often radically different from our own. And now you're faced with the technological manifestation of that same principle. A door that only opens for a specific family. A quirky, related tidbit is the modern-day urban legend of the biometric CEO. The idea that high-level corporate or government facilities have doors that will only open for the CEO or a top official using their handprint or retinal scan. While such technology exists, its implementation is rarely so dramatic. But the myth persists because it taps into that same idea of a special, chosen individual for whom all doors will open. A chilling thought occurs to you. What if Thorn is wrong? What if the door isn't keyed to someone with Anunnaki DNA, but to Gilgamesh himself? What if it requires the hand of the king, dead for 5,000 years, to open it? The entire mission would be a failure, stopped at the very last step by a lock you could never, ever pick. But Thorn seems confident. He walks slowly toward the obsidian slab. "You, Thorn?" Doc asks, bewildered. "You think you're, what? A descendant of these things?" "No," Thorn says, shaking his head. "My DNA is as boringly human as anyone's." He opens his ever-present pelican case. You had almost forgotten about it in the chaos. He lifts out not a piece of technology, but what looks like a fossil. A piece of dark, amber-colored, petrified something. It's encased in a complex metal housing with a handle. "I don't have the key, but I have a copy." He holds it up. When the original Anunnaki left Earth, they left behind helpers, overseers, demigods. Gilgamesh was one, but there were others. And like any good administrator, they kept samples. Genetic archives. "This," he says, holding up the strange fossil, "is a preserved sample of Anunnaki genetic material. We found it in a meteorite in Antarctica. It's what started this entire program." He slots the handle into a port on the side of the obsidian slab. It clicks into place. "Now we pray this works." He places his own hand on the glowing indentation on the door. A beam of light shoots from the door to the fossil, then to Thorn's hand. He's using his own body as a conductor, a bridge to channel the genetic signature from the fossil into the lock. The light turns from blue to green. The hum of the door changes to a soft, welcoming chime. The seventh and final gate is opening. You are about to step into the heart of the mystery, the inner sanctum. The throne room of the gods, the obsidian slab, the seventh and final gate, doesn't slide or retract. It dissolves. The solid black material turns into a swirling cloud of fine, glittering dust, and then simply vanishes, revealing the chamber beyond. The air that drifts out is cool, clean, and carries a faint, indescribable scent, something like fresh rain and old parchment. You step through the portal, leaving the long, perilous journey through the 7 gates behind you. You've made it. You are now inside the very heart of the complex, the place Gilgamesh reached at the end of his epic quest. But the chamber is not what you expected. It's not a throne room filled with gold. It's not a high-tech command center with flashing screens. It's not a crypt. It's a library. You are standing in a vast circular room. The ceiling is a dome of what looks like polished lapis lazuli, except it's not stone. It's a perfect, 3-dimensional star chart. Constellations you recognize, and many you don't, will slowly across the deep, silent blue. The floor is made of a warm, milky white material that glows with a soft, internal light. But it's the walls that draw your attention. They are lined from floor to ceiling with thousands, perhaps millions, of small, crystalline cylinders, each nestled in its own hexagonal alcove. Each cylinder glows faintly with its own internal light, pulsing gently like a dormant firefly. "What is this place?" Doc whispers, his voice full of wonder. "It's the Library of the Gods," Thorn says, his voice choked with emotion. He stumbles forward, reaching out to touch one of the cylinders but stopping himself. Each one of these, it's a book, a memory crystal. The epic calls this the place where Utnapishtim kept the knowledge of the days before the flood. This is it, the entire history and science of the Anunnaki. Everything they knew. It's all here. This is the ultimate prize. Not a weapon, not a power source, but knowledge. An archive of a civilization that was old when humanity was still in its infancy. The value of this room is incalculable. It would rewrite every book on history, science, religion, and philosophy. It is the single most important discovery in human history, hidden deep beneath the Iraqi desert. Reyes is more pragmatic. "Where's the asset, Thorn?" "The power source you told us about. The thing Gilgamesh came to get." Thorn tears his eyes away from the crystalline library. He scans the room, and his gaze settles on the center. There, on a simple low pedestal of the same white material as the floor, sits a single object. It's not a plant, not a machine, not a weapon. It's a small handheld sphere about the size of a baseball. It's made of a dark, non-reflective material that seems to drink the light. It doesn't glow or hum. It's perfectly still, perfectly silent. It looks mundane, almost disappointing. That's it, Doc says. That little black ball, that's it, Thorn confirms. The plant of rejuvenation, the portable energy source. He approaches it cautiously. The stories say it had thorns that would prick the hand, a biometric security feature, a DNA lock key to the user. As Thorn gets closer, a faint web-like pattern of blue light appears on the surface of the sphere. It's a standby mode waiting for a user. This must be the object from the legend, the thing the serpent stole. Speaking of which, the role of the serpent in ancient myths is a fascinating and recurring motif. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the serpent is a thief, stealing immortality from humanity. In the biblical story of Eden, the serpent is a tempter, tricking humanity into gaining forbidden knowledge, which leads to their loss of immortality in the garden. This is a well-known historical parallel, but the serpent isn't always a villain. In many other cultures, it's a symbol of healing, wisdom, and rebirth due to its ability to shed its skin. The rod of Asclepius, the symbol of medicine to this day, is a staff with a single serpent entwined around it. Historians still argue whether the serpent's negative portrayal in the Judeo-Christian and Mesopotamian traditions represents a conscious rejection of the pagan, serpent-worshipping cults that preceded them, or if it reflects a more fundamental human fear of the creature. Here, in this room, you are faced with the story's source. The serpent didn't just steal a plant. It stole this device. A device that could, according to Thorne's theory, rejuvenate cells, heal wounds, and dramatically extend life. It's not eternal life, but the next best thing. A quirky and somewhat amusing detail about Sumerian mythology is their obsession with bureaucracy. They had gods for everything, and their underworld was imagined to have scribes and record keepers. Some of the recovered cuneiform tablets are not grand epics, but meticulous records of temple inventories, listing every last sheep and sack of grain. It's a very practical and very human trait to imagine that even the gods have to deal with paperwork. This library, in a way, feels like the ultimate expression of that bureaucratic impulse, the meticulous, perfect archiving of an entire civilization's existence. So that's our prize, Reyes says, his eyes fixed on the small black sphere. We grab that, and we go. It's not that simple, Thorne says. He points to the pedestal. The base is not solid. It's a pressure plate. The moment we lift it, the system will know. This entire chamber is the final security measure. It's a vault. And a trap. What kind of trap? Reyes asks. Thorne gestures to the star chart on the ceiling. This isn't just a map. It's a clock. And a trigger. When we take the sphere, the system will likely initiate a full sanitization protocol. It will erase everything. The library, the power core, the entire structure. It will collapse it into a singularity, leaving nothing behind but bedrock. How much time will we have? Thorne looks at the slowly wheeling constellations on the ceiling. I don't know. The epic says Gilgamesh fled in haste. Minutes. Maybe less. The mission has reached its climax. You have to commit the ultimate act of theft, stealing the most valuable object in the room, knowing it will trigger the self-destruct sequence for the Library of Alexandria, the Vatican Archives, and the server farm at Google all rolled into one. You will save one secret by destroying a million others. It's a terrible, impossible choice. But your orders are clear. The primary objective is the sphere. Reyes looks at his team. At you. At Document. At Whisper. Get ready to run, he says, his voice grim. This is going to be a one-way trip to the surface. Thorne, get the artifact. Thorne takes a deep, steadying breath. He walks to the pedestal and reaches out with both hands, his fingers hovering just above the silent black sphere. This is the moment. the culmination of Operation Desert Bloom. The final irreversible act. Thorn's hands close around the small black sphere. For a split second, the universe holds its breath. Then, two things happen at once. The moment the sphere lifts from the pedestal, the web of blue light on its surface vanishes and a single, sharp thorn-like probe, no bigger than a needle, darts out and pricks Thorn's palm. He winces, a droplet of blood welling up. The sphere hums to life, a low, satisfied thrum. It has attuned itself to him. It's his now. Simultaneously, the entire chamber screams. It's not a sound, but a feeling, a violent psychic shriek of violation that resonates directly in your skull. The gentle, white light from the floor turns a searing, angry red. The star chart on the ceiling begins to spin violently, the constellations blurring into streaks of light. A deep, grinding, groaning sound echoes from the very foundations of the structure. The self-destruct sequence has begun. Go. Reyes screams, his voice nearly drowned out by the rising cacophony. Back the way we came. Double time. There's no time for tactics, no time for careful movement. It's a full-blown, panicked retreat. You sprint out of the library, back into the antechamber of the seventh gate. Thorn clutches the sphere to his chest, his face a mixture of triumph and terror. The mission is a success, but the price is the destruction of this entire impossible place. You race back through the level of the complex you now know so well. You pass the empty force field of the third gate, which is now flickering erratically. You run through the corridor of the pulsing crystalline light, but the light is now chaotic and fractured, flashing random, jarring colors. The beautiful symphony has become a dying shriek of static. You reach the cavern of the power core. The scene is one of pure chaos. The great sphere is no longer contained. The energy beams have failed, and is floating free, wobbling violently in the center of the vast chamber. It's glowing white-hot, shedding pieces of itself like a dying star. The hum has become a deafening roar. There's no way across. Doc yells. The floor is a molten lake of slag and fire. The walls. Reyes points. The conduits are destabilizing. They're creating a path. He's right. As the structure tears itself apart, sections of the wall are collapsing, falling into the molten floor and creating a series of makeshift, precarious bridges. It's a path, but it's a suicidal one. You leap from one falling chunk of stone to another, the heat so intense it feels like your armor is melting. You can feel the gravity in the room fluctuating wildly, making you feel light one second and crushingly heavy the next. It's a nightmare obstacle course through the heart of an exploding sun. This frantic, desperate extraction is the final, unspoken part of any Black Ops mission. Getting in is hard, but getting out with a prize, especially when you've tripped every alarm, is exponentially harder. It's a principle as old as warfare itself. Think of the historical raid on Entebbe in 1976. Israeli commandos flew thousands of miles to Uganda to rescue hostages held by terrorists. The raid itself was a masterpiece of surprise and precision, lasting less than an hour. That's the part everyone remembers. But the extraction was just as critical and dangerous. They had to get the rescued hostages, their own wounded, and themselves back onto their C-130 transport planes and take off from a hostile airport, all while under fire. One of the commandos, the unit commander Yonatan Netanyahu, was killed during this phase. It's a stark reminder that a mission isn't over until you are safely home. Your desperate scramble through this collapsing underworld is your Entebbe moment. You make it across the cavern and plunge into the corridor leading to the second gate. Behind you, the power core finally gives way. There's a flash of pure white light that burns itself onto your retinas, even with your eyes closed, and then a sound of absolute, final implosion. The entire cavern, the heart of the complex, has ceased to exist. A wave of concussive force hits you, throwing you down the corridor like a doll. You scramble back to your feet, your ears ringing, your visor display flickering with warnings. The structure is shaking violently now. Chunks of the ceiling begin to fall. You race through the keypad door of the second gate, which is now stuck half open. You squeeze through the gap and run down the final, dark corridor toward the first gate. A quirky detail of Sumerian life was their legal system. The Code of Ur-Nammu, which predates the more famous Code of Hammurabi, is one of the oldest law codes known to man. It's remarkably sophisticated, with laws against murder, theft, and kidnapping. But it also has penalties for things like impertinence from a slave. It's a fascinating mix of enlightened justice and rigid social hierarchy. You can't help but feel you've just committed the ultimate act of cosmic impertinence, and the building itself is now exacting the penalty. You reach the first chamber, the one with the invisible guardian. The great door you open with poetry is groaning, slowly closing as the power fails. It's a race against time. Reyes and Doc hurtle through. You're right behind them. Thorn, clutching his prize, is a few steps behind you. Whisper is bringing up the rear. You dive through the shrinking gap. Thorn follows, rolling as he hits the floor. But as Whisper tries to follow, a massive tremor shakes the entire level. The door slams shut with the force of a guillotine. Whisper is gone. There's no time to mourn. No time to even process it. The winch line you used to descend is still hanging from the borehole above. Get him up. Reyes yells, clipping the winch onto Thorn's harness. Get the asset out now. The engineers on the surface, alerted by your frantic comms, begin the retrieval. Thorn is yanked upwards, disappearing into the dark shaft. Doc, you're next. Reyes orders. Then you. One by one, you are pulled from the collapsing tomb. Reyes is the last. As he clips himself in and gives the signal, the floor beneath him gives way, crumbling into the screaming void below. The winch strains, and then he is pulled free, rising from the mouth of hell just as it slammed shut forever. You lie on the cool desert sand, gasping for air under the calm, indifferent stars. The ground beneath you shudders one last time, a deep, final groan, and then goes still. The silence of the desert returns, as if nothing ever happened. Operation Desert Bloom is over. The mission is a success, but the footprints you left behind have been erased, swallowed by the earth. Along with one of your own, the aftermath is as silent and surreal as the mission itself. You lie on the sand, the adrenaline draining out of you, leaving behind a hollow, trembling exhaustion. The desert air feels impossibly fresh and clean. The familiar rumble of Humvee engines is the most comforting sound you've ever heard. You look at your team. 4 of you went in. 3 came out. The loss of Whisper hangs heavy and unspoken in the air. There will be no ceremony for him, no medal. His file, like the mission itself, will be scrubbed. He will become a ghost, a name on a classified wall somewhere that no one will ever see. Thorn is already being hustled into a separate, blacked-out vehicle by men in clean, sterile uniforms, the same kind as the man from the initial briefing. They handle him with a strange mix of clinical detachment and reverence. He clutches the black sphere, his knuckles white. His face is pale, his eyes wide with the terrible, wonderful knowledge of what he has seen and what he now holds. He is no longer just a scholar. He is the custodian of a miracle, a Pandora's box that he has managed to carry out of the underworld. Your team is directed to another vehicle. The engineers are already packing up their equipment with swift, practiced efficiency. They fill the borehole with a quick-setting, high-density foam, then cover it with layers of rock and sand. Within an hour, it's as if you were never here. The sanitization is total. The desert, as always, keeps its secrets. This act of erasure is the final, crucial step. It's a modern form of the ancient Roman practice you thought of earlier, damnatio memoria. But you're not just condemning the memory of a person, you're condemning the memory of a place, of an event. You are making it unhappen. This is a tactic governments have used throughout history to control the narrative. The Soviet Union was infamous for it. This is a well-documented historical fact. Photographs were doctored to remove fallen-from-grace officials like Trotsky, making them vanish from the visual record as if they had never stood next to Lenin. History was not a record of what happened. It was a tool, constantly revised to serve the present. You are now part of that process. You are the men who were not there, who saw nothing, who did nothing. Your official mission report will be a masterpiece of fiction, a story of a routine patrol that encountered nothing out of the ordinary. The memory of the glowing walls, the screaming power core, and the library of crystals will exist only in your own minds, a shared secret trauma that you can never speak of. Historians still argue about the existence and influence of so-called shadow governments or deep states, covert networks of unelected officials who secretly manipulate policy. Is it a paranoid fantasy or a genuine feature of modern complex governments? Looking at the seamless efficiency of this operation, from the satellite discovery to the Black Ops retrieval to the meticulous cover-up, it's hard to believe there isn't some powerful hidden hand guiding events far from the public eye. As you ride back to the FOB, a strange, quirky thought comes to you. In the epic, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk empty-handed and finds solace in his city. He looks at the great walls he built and realizes that this, his legacy on Earth, is his only true immortality. It's a poignant, humanistic conclusion. But your mission has created a twisted, secret epilogue to that story. He didn't come back empty-handed. His greatest treasure wasn't lost. It was just waiting for a new kind of explorer with new kinds of tools to come and claim it. You wonder what will happen to the sphere. Will it be studied, replicated, weaponized? Will it usher in a new age of health and energy, or will it become the ultimate tool of control, a secret kept by the powerful to grant longevity to a chosen few? You suspect you know the answer. The secrets of the gods are not meant for everyone. Your mission is scrubbed. Your gear is replaced. You are given a new assignment the very next day. A mundane patrol that feels like a dream after the nightmare you just endured. The war goes on. The world keeps spinning. The official story is that the United States was in Iraq for weapons of mass destruction, for oil, for democracy. No one will ever know that a small team was sent to steal the secret of life from the grave of a 5,000-year-old king. But sometimes, late at night, when the desert is quiet and the stars are bright, you look up and remember the impossible star chart on the ceiling of that library. You remember the feeling of the building screaming as it died. And you remember the face of Whisper as the great stone door slid shut. And you are left with only the rumors, the whispers, and the story that you can never tell. A story of a mission to a world beneath the world, a journey into the heart of the oldest myth, a mission code-named Operation Desert Bloom. The story now is all that's left. The hum of the engines fades now, and the grit of the desert sand begins to settle, replaced by the quiet stillness of your own room. The echoes of that impossible mission recede, leaving behind only the soft, gentle darkness. The journey was a long one, descending not just into the earth but deep into the past, into the very heart of our oldest stories and our most modern secrets. But all journeys, especially the ones we take together in the night, must eventually lead back to a place of rest. Let the questions of what was found and what was lost drift away now, like smoke on the cool night air. Allow the tension to release from your shoulders, letting your body grow heavy and comfortable, sinking deeper into the welcome softness of your bed. The ancient world and its unbelievable secrets will wait. They have been waiting for thousands of years, after all, slumbering in the quiet earth, and they will be there to explore another time. For now, there is only the peaceful rhythm of your own breathing, a slow and steady tide pulling you out into a calm, silent sea of sleep. Let the last vestiges of the story fade into a gentle, soothing blur, a distant memory that can no longer trouble you. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to see. There is only rest. As we reach the end of this chilling investigation, one thing becomes disturbingly clear. The official story doesn't add up. Why did U.S. forces secure ancient Sumerian sites with such secrecy? Why were archaeologists silenced? And most importantly, what did they really uncover beneath the ruins of Uruk? Whether it was the preserved body of Gilgamesh, forbidden technology, or a gateway to something far more dangerous, the evidence points to a massive cover-up. The truth lies buried, but not forgotten. History books may never tell this version. But you just heard the story they don't want you to know.